Hello everyone and welcome back to Fleet's Catch-Up Ramblings. You'll have to forgive me. I'm running a little bit behind the times today, and also I'm a little bit tired. So I'll do my best, but this might not be up to the usual rambling standards, and I might also be a little bit off kilter compared to normal, so you'll have to bear with me. I'll do the best I can, as I always attempt to. And I'll also try to get through all of the questions today, as again, I also always try to do. But, like I say, if I can get through the questions, then fantastic. If I can't within a certain time frame, then we cross that bridge when we come to it, and we'll see about doing a... I might work through some of the questions while I'm doing my Airships Conquer the Sky stream on Sunday. But if not, we'll just see what works. But I'm going to go for about an hour and a half. Sorry for being silent, folks. I'm just being silent. I'm silently thinking. Anyway, so, without further ado, and with Fleet still temporarily losing his marbles, let's get right into it. Once I've gotten the... bits and bobs. Let me just make sure that everything is as it should be. As it should be. There we go. There we go. And then... there we go. And then we want... that. And we're live. Right, so without further ado, let's quickly work through the questions that we've got. How many do we have? How many? That's not too many. I should be able to plow through that in about an hour. Give or take. Try my best. Anyway, so, without further ado, and to my audience of one, the ever loyal Teamu, thank you Teamu for being here, as always. Let's get right into it. Like I say, you'll have to excuse me, I'm a little bit scatterbrained, I'm a little bit tired. I will try my best to keep myself on track, and I will try myself to keep things going, but... brain not function good after a long week at work. Brain not function good. So, like I say, I'll try my best. And we'll get through these questions as best we can. And hopefully, all being well, things will move quite well. See? I'm doing my 1,000-yard stare, and I'm just, my brain completely, see what I mean? My brain's scatterbrained. That's why I'm going silent, because my brain's just going, no. Right, so, scatterbrained fleet aside, as I am. Right, Butmill Boy, why did the British think the Yamatos would have 17-inch guns when nobody had really considered guns of that caliber since the Ironclad era? If you want my honest answer, I have no idea. Me, personally, I have no idea. My guesstimate would be is that it is a step up, but it's not a step up that's too big, and it would enable them to put more power into making these ships fast battleships rather than 26.5 knot. Is it 26 or 27.5 knot battleships the Yamatos are? I forget. Either way, make them faster, I think. Possibly. But like I said, that's one that you'd need Drac or Dr. Clark for. Speaking of which, typical, I literally go back to work on the regular, and then Drac starts keeping to his schedule of having lives every month. Again. Now that I'm working. Typical. Hello, Moe. Typical gunnery officer. What's your opinion on the racing M50 SMG? Why didn't it replace the Thompson SMG or become the standard SMG for the US forces in large numbers, like the Thompson or the grease gun? What the frick is a racing M50?
Yeah, go for it.
It's I don't know what to make of this. It looks like...
Simply to say, it's not very good.
Yeah, I can just tell by looking at the bloody thing it's not very good. And I'm not even a fucking guns guy. And if I'm sat there going, this shit ain't good, Chief, then I'm sorry, but...
So, here's the thing. Functionally, it's about the same as a Thompson. The big thing is that it's supposed to be a lot cheaper than a Thompson, which isn't that hard to do.
The grease gun exists.
However,
why do you need
it? No, the grease gun didn't exist when the Rising exists.
Oh.
Rising is basically trying to do what the grease gun did, but the Rising had a lot of reliability issue. It jams a lot.
Yeah, I'm looking at the action. And even dumb old Fleet with his no nonsense about fucking firearms is sat there going, that looks flimsy as fuck.
Functionally, it suffers it kind of suffers the M16 problem. It needs a lot of attention and cleaning in order for it to not jam. And let's just say when you're on Guadalcanal, that doesn't help.
This gun needs to be cool so it doesn't jam. I know, we'll take it to the fucking Pacific.
And, I mean, to be fair, you have to understand, it's taken to the Pacific because Marines will take whatever the hell they could get their hands on. This gun basically got thrown into Guadalcanal because it's the usual. The Army did not want this, and the Marine is like, cool, free shit! We must have!
And then they regretted it.
Well, no, they just used it until, they used it until pretty much they ran out of parts or whatever. Because it's the Marine Corps. It is basically herder, use whatever we have. We don't have a choice. No one is giving us shit.
Okay.
All the grants is off to the Army again, and
Yes. Bowmill Boy asks, why does Dr. Clark always say it sounds terrible but before the most inoffensive statement in human history? He has a certain way with words, does Alex. Shall I just say? I don't always agree with his way with words. I think he should just come out and say it rather than try to pussyfoot around the issue at times. But that's just the way he speaks. And, I can be a little bit overdramatic. That's kind of my thing. Foxo Dragon's blunt to a fault. We all have our little idiosyncrasies. Timu, panel's thoughts on how the cooldown from World War II Royal Navy should have handled. Panel's thoughts on how the cooldown from World War II RN should have handled.
How they should demobilize,
Oh,
basically.
if you want my honest opinion, that's outside of my wheelhouse. And the reason I say that is because that's personnel. That's personnel, and that is not an area of expertise, nor is it an area that I really enjoy looking into. So I'm sorry to say that is one of those things where, in the absence of other panel members, I'm not really...
I think he's trying to ask what ship you were kept in active service.
No. You actually got it right, Moe. He did want to know about personnel.
Oh, okay. Then, truly, I don't know.
Yeah, this is my thing. So, same thing with me. It ain't my wheelhouse. Bone Mill Boy, how far could the original USS Saratoga have been modified into a modern carrier? Could it last as long as the Midways? And Ruinon giving her 2 cents. Probably, but you're almost doing a great rebuild of the engineering plant and hangar. Yeah, that's the thing. For the Lexington, for Saratoga to have any post-war utility, you're looking about paying the cost of a new Midway and then probably a half as much again to get a useful carrier out of her.
You're basically rebuilding a new ship.
Oh,
she does have mass.
Oh, and that's, by the way, that's before we talk about anything to do with angled flight decks or anything like that. We're just talking about at the end of the war the work she needs to get her back into service and capable of handling the absolute latest and greatest aircraft.
She absolutely have the mass though. She is technically still a bigger ship than an Essex.
Oh yeah, like of all of the carriers,
she has the capacity.
Yeah.
However,
the cost
that hull is really old in the tooth. We're getting nearly 19-20 years into her hull, and that's just a bad idea.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, 96831's question can't be answered. So I'm gonna have to, for the first time ever, I'm going to have to put across a question unanswerable because it was for Hard Thrasher, and we're never going to get Hard Thrasher. So, question unanswerable. Benno, how effective would a Davy Crockett on a ship be? Unless you're in some warped version of Vietnam, where the monitors are being allowed to carry and launch Davy Crockett into the jungles, there's no real practical use for a recoilless rifle mounting Davy Crockett on a ship. It's actually too short-ranged. And you have better options in the Cold War period for nuclear delivery from ship to anything else. Like the nuclear telegraph pole, also known as Talos. I love Talos, it's just stupidly insane. YouTube Minecraft Watcher asks, what if the US Army in 1935 decided to replace the Browning 1919 with an MG42-esque GPMG? Would it help the American Army and Marines during World War II? Well, first of all, the MG42 isn't a GPMG. It's a... Depending on how it's mounted, it's a... Hang on, remind me again, what is a GPMG before I put my foot in it?
General Purpose Machine Gun.
Is the MG42 a GPMG? Am I putting my foot in it?
It is. It is what you would describe as a general purpose machine gun. It could be bipod mounted, tripod mounted. It's definitely the definition of what you would classify nowadays as a GPMG.
I mean, the US did have a GPMG.
Yeah, it's called M1919.
Yeah, it's right there. That
it's
is
heavy AF.
But it does and can fill the same roles that the MG42 did.
The big thing about 1919 is that it's probably not. It's not as good as a squad automatic weapon out of the sheer fact that it is 30 pounds.
Yeah, you need a
But
proper.
a 1919 is infinitely better suited on a tripod mount, and it has more utility on the heavier side of things because it's a heavier gun to
Now,
begin
when
with.
you
It's
get
designed as a cruiser weapon.
yeah, now when you get the A6, that's a slightly better fit for the squad GPMG role. But again, it is a
But
heavy
it's still
fucker.
not. It's just, yeah. The 1919 is just heavy. It is what it because it is what it is. It is just the standard 1917 action design. It is a toggle. It is a whole bunch of toggle locks and stuff like that. It is fundamentally something you have to change the internals completely if you want to get it light enough to the point where you can use it like a proper GPMG.
I will also point out that doctrinally, the US isn't set up for that sort of setup. The Germans have built their whole squad around the machine gun. The US and the Allies haven't. Neither have the Russians.
It's not that they haven't, it's that the US is more intent on fire and maneuver. The maneuver part is the more important part.
Well, the thing is, so are the Germans, to be fair. It's just that...
Well, no, not really. The Germans' tactic is more centralized on around the machine gun. Like, so my point is, for the Americans, the machine gun has to also be a part of the maneuvering element. The Germans' machine gun isn't. And now, I'm not saying the machine gunner doesn't move. It's just that when he moves, the entire squad moves around him. The Americans are not set up like that. The Americans is more intent on individual firepower. Everybody has a level of firepower that could provide a level of suppression. It's just that the guy with the bar is the guy that can lay down the most amount of fire when the situation requires even more firepower. But he has to run around with the rifles. That's why the 1919 was not a very good option for that. Yeah, it offers a lot of firepower, but goddamn, that guy lugging it hates his life. I mean, the situation is still the same nowadays, right? Sure, you could lug us all around, but damn, the guy lugging us all around still hates his life when he has to run around, with the guy with the M4s, because he's lugging like 2-3 belts, and the saw isn't exactly light. But would it help the U.S. Army? We're getting to the point, we're at the point where small arms just not. It doesn't make that much of a different impact on the battlefield now at that era. It would. The U.S. Army would probably enjoy having something with more firepower than a bar, but can you maintain mobility? Can you get something with the firepower of MG42 while maintaining mobility of a bar? Because the MG42 isn't going to say offer the same level of maneuverability a bar would offer as well, and that's just something the Americans are more interested in. Anyway, we can move on now.
I can see which naval vessel survived a war with the most hits by torpedoes. Oklahoma is excluded because it was not repaired or recommissioned. I mean, I'll have to punch that into Google, I guess, and see what it spits out.
Survive a war? That's hard.
Fuck off, AI. No. Charnos didn't survive. Oh, I can see why that's the question, because Google is fucking useless. You
I
probably
mean, that's the thing. You also have the issue of,
you probably
are
want to ask Alex or Drac this. They are the ones who have all of the encyclopedias. I only have a percentage of the encyclopedias. They have
I would
all of the
imagine.
Oh, Cyclic's here. Hello. Do you know what ship in World War II took the most torpedoes and lived, by chance? Because if you don't, we're stuck.
No, but if I had to guess, Saratoga's probably up there on the list.
That's a good point.
Not all at once, obviously.
Yeah, but she did
She
survive the
keeps
war.
taking random torpedo.
Yeah, but she did survive the war, that's the thing.
But I'm not confident in saying she has the most.
We'll put Saratoga in there as a maybe, but put that Akazuki, if you're listening to this either after the fact or live right now, put that one to Alex or Drac. They will know. I only have a percentage of the encyclopedias. They have all of them.
Yeah, and Phoenix is at work, so...
Ah, yes, that is something Phoenix would know.
Yeah. He may not, actually, but...
Look, the odds are better. Oh, good. 1971. If the British bought E1 Tracer, what changes did the British make? Honestly, not that much. I think the British can operate Tracer. They'll have to make some changes to the cats, because Tracer isn't compatible with the cats on the British Calabar carriers. But apart from that basic thing, to actually make the thing go off the front of the catapult, I don't think there's anything that needs to be changed. Tracer is a decent, reliable...
It's a lot taller.
It depends on when they buy it, right?
End up having to be deck parked, but that's fine. It's twin radial engines.
Yeah.
Is the radar fine with the deck park?
Yeah, it's environmentally protected.
Fair enough. Look, I'm here to ask the dumb questions. That's my job.
I mean, the biggest thing I'd say is that if you're operating Tracer, there's no reason not to operate Tracker as well, because they're the same airframe, and that means in that period, you're going to have S2 Tracker if you were to go with it, and that's a really capable fixed-wing anti-submarine warfare bird.
We've basically just removed Gannet. Goodbye.
I mean, flatly in these roles, it's superior. My question is, how much does it disrupt operations on a lot of these carriers, because they are really small?
Yes. We do know that Tracer and the Argentinians do operate Tracker from the Cinco de Mayo, and they just about make it work. And on the larger Audacious class...
That's where my concern comes from.
Well, the Audacious class are much larger carriers than the Cinco de Mayo, don't forget. She is only a light fleet.
They are, but they're not primarily operating the absolutely tiny A4 and very efficiently packing A4 Skyhawk.
True.
So... Now, that said, prior to the F4 Phantom, most British aircraft on board their carriers weren't that big.
I mean, to be
We're
fair...
looking at Sea Venoms and stuff like that.
I think the best way you have this is basically, if you are gonna get Tracer, you're gonna need some need for the capability of carriers to do airborne early warning and control.
Which the British did have. That's why they had AW Gannet.
No. You cut me off. I was going to say improve over the existing capability. Why do you need that? The reason you would need that is if you're procuring CVA-01, which gets around the carriers are too small and inefficiently deck planned.
Honestly, I think if you had the Maltas, I could see Britain going for this capability.
Yeah, I suppose if you rebuild the mortars, you can get something equivalent to a British Midway, which is just about big enough that it's not going to cause too many issues. And the mortars have the hangers that, if
I mean,
rebuilt...
it's not even just about big enough. Like, Tracer was designed with sort of the midways in mind.
Yeah.
The E2 was the one that kind of ran into problems on the midways. We were able to operate it from them, but it had limitations to it. So
Timu, 7 inches sounds like a lot of clearance. It is not.
in many cases, what that means is you have to how do I put this? For maintenance on the top, or maintenance or painting of the top side of the radar dome, you just have to move it onto the deck. And you can do that particularly with, if you're only carrying 2, maybe 3 aircraft, probably in this case 2. But that, if you're only running 2 or 3 aircraft, that is going to impact your availability. Now, that said, we're in an era of carrier aviation where realistically day-night capability is highly questionable to begin with, of any meaningful capability. Now, conversely, this is an area where you could need it, because you're talking about fleet air defense. And, in the 60s, the Soviets are fielding cruise missile armed bombers. And that is concerning. The really scary part is, by the time you get into the mid to late 60s, they're fielding bombers with the really scary missiles. AS-4 is not a 1980s missile. AS-4 Kitchen, KH-22.
Yeah, Kitchen. Yeah.
It's not a 1970s missile either.
Nope. No, it is not. Spooky
Nor
missile.
is AS-6.
Yeah. You really do need an ability to push fighters out away from the carrier, so you can push the bombers out away from the carrier.
Yeah, and now, conversely, the trade-off with, say you're fielding 3 of these, or you go for 4 and you're a little lighter on your strike, particularly since, by the time the British F-4s come around, you have them and they can carry a decent amount of bombs.
Wouldn't Buccaneer be the bomb truck?
What?
Wouldn't Buccaneer be the bomb truck and the strike aircraft rather than the Phantoms?
But you may decide that, hey, it might behoove us to be a little heavier on the fleet air defense side of things, given the bomber and missile threat.
I mean, if you've got Tracer, you've got a much better ability, because Gannett is nice for airborne early warning, but it can't really do control, whereas Tracer can actually do control. And at that point, if you've got the capability, you can I think. Sorry, that thought ran out of steam. Carry on, Cyclic.
So yeah, Buccaneer, you'd have some Buccaneers, but you might take less by the time of the Phantom, at least, because the Phantom can kind of be your generalist fighter bomber in the air wing. And your Buccaneer can be your specialized strike, whether that's anti-ship, or very, very specifically low-level attack sort of a deal, where if you just need to put bombs on target on an installation or whatever, just generic bombing, the F-4 Phantom's perfectly capable of doing that, and actually doing that with a reasonable degree of precision with dive toss.
Yep.
For the era. It can even do a reasonable bomb attacks on moving surface vessels with dive toss. It's just that by the 80s, it's 70s and 80s. It's a little questionable when you're talking about engaging SAN one-armed ships or SAN 3 or 4-armed ships. But then again, by that point, coming in at very low level with Buccaneer is also a very bad idea. It's a large enough radar signature for those engagement systems to be able to pick it out and engage it. Not to mention, it's a big enough target for Soviet radar-directed gunfire to take down.
Yeah.
So you really need to be engaging with missiles by that point. But this is part of the reason why you start seeing in the 70s Western navies going, yeah, we need air-launched anti-ship missiles. The U.S. Navy was able to hold that off a little bit longer because of Walleye.
Yeah.
Walleye holds you outside of SAN-1's engagement envelope if you're smart about your attack profile. But and then you just lock it onto the target ship with its imaging seeker and laugh and fly away safe.
Yeah. Knight, in regards to your comment about them possibly being converted to turboprops, it's honestly not worth it. It's a much easier thing
you just replace it with E2.
Yeah, but also, yes, the Royal Navy did ditch Avgas, but I will point out, if they're adopting Tracer, just find a fuel tank to convert to Avgas again on whatever carrier they're on. It's not hard. Just fill one up with Avgas. It can't be that hard, surely.
Well, keep in mind when E1 comes around, right? So
1960.
E1 is a remarkably early. Yeah, I'm double checking right now.
I thought it's a flip-based platform.
But it's a remarkably early AWACS platform.
1960, yeah.
My memory is correct.
Yeah.
It replaced the AEW Skyraider.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was a Skyraider. Yeah, it was. So
damn, Hawkeye's also a fairly early platform.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of insane just how different they look and how much more advanced Hawkeye looks compared to Tracer. I always thought Hawkeye was a mid-70s platform, but it's not.
No, Hawkeye came around during the Vietnam War.
I did not know that. I have learned that today. I thought that was a much later aircraft.
Like, E2C is a really old aircraft, too, by the way. Like, the C version of it.
Good Lord.
The U.S. Navy ran the C with minor upgrades for a very long time. Some of those minor upgrades being allowing it to guide SM-2ER terminally. Only a minor upgrade. Enabling surface units to be able to engage out 100 miles. Even if the target was below the radar horizon.
Knight, yes, the Royal Navy ditched Avgas because of flyability risk, and the S2 successfully being turbine converted, so turboprop E1 is durable. It's just not worth it, Knight. It's genuinely
whether it is or not is immaterial here. It's if the Royal Navy wanted Tracer, they would have figured a way out to have it. Whether or not they ditched Avgas is utterly immaterial.
Gunnery Officer asks, opinions on the Japanese Type 99 LMG. Which LMG is better, the Type 99 or the Bren, since they look familiar? The Type 99, from what I can tell, is a case of convergent evolution. So
I think it's actually derived from the Czech gun.
from what I've been
They
looking
got
at, I've been looking at that, but from what I can see, it's not. It's to do
no,
the
it
reason.
is. Don't forget,
Not
Type
sure.
99 is just a rechambered Type 96.
That's why
Type
that.
96 is Type 96 is what you need to look at in terms of design, and basically they took elements of the Hotchkiss, they took element of the the predecessor to the brand gun basically, and they
Yeah.
basically threw it together and tell Nambu figure something out, and that's what the Type 96 is. And then Type 99 comes in because the Japanese
they had
army switched over
captured
to 77.
ZB VZ-26 in China from the Republic of China Army, and well, I think that says enough.
Yeah. Funny thing is, Japanese small arms actually were. The Japanese kind of understood the industrial potential that they had. Kind of like the Italians did with small arms as well. They kind of realized, okay, because again, their machine guns fire exactly the same cartridges as their rifles, which I know a lot of countries do as well. But, I mean, like, it's not a different way you can literally just... Again, my thoughts are running away with them. Stop fucking speaking before I fucking... Sorry, my brain, I've had a long week at work. I am not functioning at 100% capacity today. Brain is not good. But anyway. But yeah, so Type 99, Type 96, the Bren. I
mean, I think you can't. I think the difference is going to come down to cartridge and environment and amount of iteration on the platform. So the British Bren just got more development put into it because the British were, how do I put this, not on the losing end of a war. They had a much greater industrial base. Like, I don't see really the point of going, well, which one's better?
They do
There
the
were
same
machine
thing.
guns
They both did
for
their job
armies that
well.
fought differently in different environments. Like,
each army said, we need a machine gun. We need a light machine gun to go in a squad. Went away to the manufacturers and said, we want a light machine gun to go in the squad. This is what we want it to do. This is why we wanted to do it. And the manufacturers came back with the Type 96 and 99 for the Japanese and the Bren for the British.
and what I will say is, for the British and the Bren is widely considered to be the best light machine gun of World War II.
Really?
Yes. It is widely considered to be the best infantry light machine gun of World War II. It is easy to reload. It is accurate. It is reliable. It can sustain fire. And keep in mind, pretty much every belt fed of World War II is not a light machine gun. It is at lightest a medium machine gun or a general purpose machine gun. Those are very different guns with very different requirements. The style of machine gun that like the Bren or the Type 99 or 96 are, and even the I won't say that, but that those machine guns do not really slow their infantry down and still make it possible to have a very good base of fire for the infantry section. So like it was a very good light machine gun, and it really made up for the otherwise lack of firepower in a British infantry section. Now, this is coming from an American perspective, where semi-automatic rifles were mass issued. But it's not so much suppression by accurate fire rather than volume seed otters. It's accurate fire from a rifle section with a semi-automatic rifle versus accurate fire with a bolt-action rifle are two different things.
As good as the British were with our bolt-action rifles, you just cannot match what you could achieve with a semi-auto. It's not possible. You can be the fastest.
Irrespective of this, it allowed Seed Otters that's not how World War II combat worked. Like, just patently. But I know that's the common idea of it, but that's not how it worked.
It was very much more freeform than that, wasn't it? For the most part.
Well, not so much that. It's the reality of infantry engagements. You're not shooting like that. You recognize that you are taking fire from that area, and you are putting fire into said area. You're not sitting there trying to pick out an individual and shoot an individual. You know you're taking fire from those bushes and that tree line, and so you're putting fire into it. So that you can then maneuver on the enemy, close with, and engage, and kill.
That's the name of the game.
How infantry combat works is through suppression, maneuver, through suppression through fire, maneuver, and then typically, particularly in World War II, the prolific use of hand grenades or bayonets to then clear the position. And preferably if you have enough submachine guns available to the rifle platoon, there will be some individuals with submachine guns at the forefront of that clearing effort. Now, one of the advantages of the Brent is it slots in very well to that style of combat. It doesn't really encumber the individual or the assistant gunner. They're able to act like a normal member of the rifle section. And when it comes to clearing, the Bren isn't so over encumbering, particularly in a World War II context, lengthwise, that you can't use it to help you clear a position.
And that is
then immediately move to consolidate on that position with it.
Woo!
The U.S. very much succeeded in infantry combat, fire superiority-wise, because of its semi-automatic rifles, in spite of the BAR.
In spite of the BAR.
Whereas the British, whereas given what we've said, it can be argued, given what we've said, that for the British, they succeeded.
Despite
there were a couple of things at the platoon and company level that really helped them. One, a lot of maneuvers were company level, but that's kind of normal for this size of for infantry. But what that also meant is that I think at the platoon level, the Brits had like 2-pounder mortars or whatever they called them. It was like 40-millimeter mortars. And those really weren't great for HE throwing, but what they were good for was on-call smoke. Nice.
Oh yeah, there we are. Mortarman, 2-inch airborne mortar.
Yeah, 2-inch mortar.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, U.S. platoons typically had some mortars as well, but
I didn't realize each British section had a marksman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you look here at the parachute rifle platoon, now this is the paras. Regular infantry is going to look different.
Yeah. Hang on, let me just hang on. Yeah, just let me get that up on the
let's preface that this is from battle order, and Battle Order has a beautiful video out there on the British Army rifle section and its history, and I highly recommend it.
Indeed.
He's got a lot for.
Actually, yes. I'll tell you what I will do. I will do a side by side actually, and then we can go through them together.
Yeah, and you can see the American one as well.
Yeah, I'll do. I'll get all three. I'll get all three. Give me a second.
And put them in rambling text here on your server too.
Oh yeah, no, that's what C-Dodders is doing. He's getting.
Well, I'm talking about the other ones. Because I'm currently playing the new linear campaign for Sea Power, so
very nice.
I've got this up on my second screen.
Yeah, very nice. Okay, so that's the British parachute. Actually, that's the platoon. I want the platoon. I want the section. Where's the British rifle section? That's a parachute rifle section. I hope they have a normal infantry section. I suppose it'll do. It's parachute section. It's close enough to a normal section.
It's good. Parachute platoons are typically pretty different in World War II than the rest of an army.
Oh, there we go. So there we go.
As you can see here, here's the regular rifle platoon. There's a notable difference. Instead of 3 2-inch mortars, 1 per section, there's like 1 for the platoon. But that's still useful for throwing smoke and things like that. And there's also 1 less Bren gun and a lot less submachine guns. So the other,
and there's the Imperial Japanese.
Sort of getting back to my main point, because we got tangented here, is there's a pretty big and general misconception about infantry combat when you look down at the statistics and the history of it. It's not about plinking at the enemy. You're generally using area fire for suppression, which is a volume of fire thing, even if it is accurate area fire. And you're generally not shooting more than 300 meters, 350 at max. It's why we have seen since World War II a change in priorities and trade-offs in infantry weapons. Small caliber, high velocity rounds. And that fire and maneuver dynamic, I'm tired, I've had a long week, and B, I've got a good amount of Benadryl still in my system thanks to a severe allergic reaction. But that fire and maneuver dynamic really, really lends itself to semi-automatic fire. And is one of the main reasons I said that the British Army rifle section and platoons really succeeded in their roles because of the Bren and the sheer amount of ammo they carried for the Bren, understandable.
Because if you look at the size of the Bren just in terms of ergonomics and how it is compared to a standard rifle, the actual proportions of the weapon are not that much different from a standard infantry rifle. And that matters when it comes to maneuverability and the ability to use it to clear. Backing up the squad's 1 submachine gun. And then the Germans. Ah, yes, the Germans. Although I am surprised they have 2 MP40s per squad, given that the MP40 was a weapon in incredibly short supply. Never had enough of them. But again, it's Nazi Germany. They never had enough of anything.
Including common sense.
Yeah.
Fight a war with
Anyway.
everyone.
Shall we move on?
Yeah. But yeah, just there you go. There are the
Yeah.
Germans. 3 squads. Now the thing is, the German squad is built around the machine gun. It is in service to the machine gun. That is the German way of running their squads in the Second World War. Now, to apply my very, very limited knowledge, and Cycling can correct me here, this is the last thing I want to say on this. The Germans would be looking to flush the enemy out into the fire from the machine gun, and then use that to maneuver once they have suppressed the enemy that way.
Mm-mm.
You're close, but you're still way off. So the machine gun was there as a base to enable the others to move. It wasn't to flush the enemy out into the machine. Ideally, if you can take a position without, a fixed fight, that's preferable in warfare to killing everybody in it. And the Germans were very conscious of this. It's not even suppressive fire. That is really the point. You can see the Benadryl's causing me problems.
Cyclic loading noises?
Buffering problems.
Dear.
But yeah, the point there is, let me correct myself. The point there is to suppress, keep heads down, and enable the rest of the squad to maneuver. The German squad does not work without those machine guns.
Yep.
Or without another concept of magazine-fed, select fire weapons that everybody's got.
YouTube Minecraft Watcher asks, what if a county class from 1939 appears today temporarily for a modern refit? What upgrades would be applied to the cruiser before it teleports back to 1939? Brackets, while the upgrades are being done, the crew is being trained to operate, maintain the new equipment, and take manufacturing knowledge with them. And the allotted time for the refit is 3.5 years. No, you're not refitting the cruiser.
They can't take manufacturing knowledge back with them.
The thing you do is you drill the history of the Second World War into them in detail. Exactly what the Germans are doing, exactly what they've had planned, the flaws in the Nazi, Italian, and Japanese states, what their pressure points are, how to apply the maximum amount of pressure to the populace, the country, and the economy, so they collapse even harder.
Yeah, the most you could do is give them a modern civilian bunch of spares, and maybe 2 to 3 other kits.
I suppose you could. But
that's about it.
I suppose you could come up with a. I suppose if you've got 3.5 years, would it be possible to come up with a select fire replacement for the Lee Enfield that could be built with some of the tooling for the Lee Enfield? No, sorry, not select fire. Sorry, semi-auto.
There's no point.
No point.
Just buy Garand at that point.
That is not going to do anything to change the impact of the war or the outcome of the war.
Mm-hmm.
Infantry rifles do not do that.
Yeah.
Even the M1. Sorry, Patton, you're wrong.
Wow.
And he honestly should have known better.
Forget what the exact verbiage I used for my annotation on that one. Oh, I didn't annotate it. I did annotate it.
Realistically, none IMO. The hull and superstructure are largely incapable of taking a lot of current service/production systems. Maybe some bolt-on sensors. Honestly, I just took a laptop loaded with blueprints and tech documents and a large format printer with a truckload of ink and paper and call it a refit.
They wouldn't be able to sustain the laptop. They wouldn't be able to do much of anything with a lot of the stuff. What they'd be able to do a lot of stuff with is stuff from the late 40s. The moment you start getting into like modern electronics, forget it.
Yeah.
Like even proto-modern electronics, forget it.
Yeah, it needs to be stuff they can replicate. And most importantly, it needs to be stuff... And that's why I still say the biggest thing isn't so much systems knowledge or a refit to the ship itself. It's what you could... It's what you can do with the crew while they're here.
Yeah, but like the weak points of at least the European axis are well known. And if you give them that future knowledge, you're going to have the butterfly effect, the butterfly effect problem.
I mean,
Where that
politely,
knowledge is going to be,
politely, that ship's already sailed.
That ship's already sailed.
Yeah, the county's there. That ship has sailed. If the butterfly effect's going to happen anyway, may as
If you
well
let it- yeah.
She is
So-
here!
I joined after I heard you bring up modern electronics and World War II.
We're discussing how best to... I mean, honestly,
Because they can probably get vacuum tubes working. That's about it.
I mean, the best thing that we can do with actually refitting the county is attempt to refit it at least visually with paperwork to back up why we've done it. The AA fit a ship would carry in 1945. So lots of Bofors, lots of Oerlikon.
We don't have that to give the ship.
No.
Why?
No, not
Okay, why not
actual-
instead of
Can I...
like actually fitting it out for like later war? You just give them like all the blueprints for the late war stuff.
No,
Yeah.
that's my thing. So the ship's not... They're not actual Bofors and 20 mils. They're mock-ups. And you basically use the ship as an example, basically. You include the documents, you include the paperwork, you include some historical books and texts. You have the ship mocked up with this array of 40 mils and 20 mils, and that, and you say, and you include historical documents that say, this is what a ship needs to realistically, deter large-scale air attack.
I don't think you'd need to mock it up to do that, but you're probably
Yeah,
right
you-
there.
that's
This is the
why-
sort of
that's-
AA fits you guys should be building.
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I say give them tech specs. I just mean blueprints of stuff that they can build that's useful. Like the only reason
Just
I
chuck
say
it full of blueprints.
yeah,
of
the only
late war
reason
stuff.
I say ship a laptop and a large format printer is so they can easily replicate it.
True.
And I would say that any tough book, as long as you don't throw 120 into or 240 into a transformer meant for 120, a laptop's power supply is going to be able to handle the irregularities in 1940s power. It may not last as long as it would in a modern era, but it'll last long enough for them to be able to get the information out of it, especially if they've got a couple of writers who have been trained on how to use basic computer stuff. And in 3.5 years, they can get those writers trained really good.
Yeah.
Like,
It might actually be better than me.
The best thing you can probably do is give them as much info as you can on rocketry.
Yeah,
That could actually help, because the basics for that are universal. You don't need modern computing to understand the basics of rocket engineering. The computing comes in when you try to guide the damn thing.
I'm guessing this is pre-war, right?
No, it's 39.
39.
It's a county from 39.
Presumably, basically, right when the war starts.
Hmm.
Yeah, the best thing you can do is give them a whole bunch of info on rocketry. And
Yeah.
what fuels
Why not? Why not give them also blueprints for the fucking Centurion?
No.
Just all the blueprints.
No, the industrial base isn't present for that. The
Uh-huh.
best thing to do would probably be to give them like
might-
end of upgrade cycle developments, like the most improved version of, say, a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine.
Yeah.
That's something that would be within reach for the industrial base at the time.
It's like, we're already building Merlins. Here's the end point of the Merlin with all the technical documents to back it up. written by our own
Yeah.
company, just in the future. Here's the best version of the Hispanos we're already building. Like, you know, like,
Here's
that's
how you
not
get the
No
gonna-
model.
problems.
You're not really going to actually change anything there, though, Fleet.
Well,
I
you
mean,
can't
nothing-
change much industrially. It's just
Yeah,
not
you're
the way
not.
the game is played.
I don't know, you give them a Enigma machine.
The best thing you can do is point them in the right direction of things.
yeah. That is the
Which
thing.
is why it's in rocketry.
Oh, I think it's not so. Rocketry is a decent thing for
I'm
them
not
to
even
have.
sure rocketry is worth it, Fleet. It's
Uh,
certainly not going to have a meaningful impact on World War II.
Well, yeah, what I mean is, like, neat. The meaningful impact stuff is the information we're pumping into this ship and this crew. The books, the documents, the information, the histories.
Yeah, and
I don't really have an and. That was the whole point.
yeah, and what I'm getting at here is information on rocketry. Like, it's not going to help them win the war faster.
Well, yeah, I never said it was going to.
Information on it's not going to mitigate losses anywhere, but like, say, information on, hey, this is the sorts of AA fits that you are going to need. You're going to need a lot of guns, a lot more than you think.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more than people were thinking were adequate AA fits in 1939. Hey, maybe here's how you should start thinking fleet-wise about transatlantic convoys, or maybe here's some areas to point you in for making better use of your ASW warfare combatants, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that they avoid the dead ends
Yeah,
and
it's
concentrate on the
doctrine and
areas that
philosophies
will be
you want.
effective.
Yeah. What were you saying, Shea? Doctrine and philosophy, I think?
Yeah, it's the doctrine and philosophies that you want to drill into them. For instance, how best to use what you have and what you will have. If we give them even some minor knowledge to do with the air war, we could avoid a couple of years of floundering around. At sea, as Cyclic has said, you get to give them general philosophies and doctrines on how best to use the air defense suites they have, what should be expected, and what the minimum requirements are. So we could skip maybe a couple years of fucking around, but that's
The
really it.
floundering and dying. Yeah.
And I mean, we could also
Well,
avoid some
hey-
significant RN losses, because if we send back a history book that she says courageous and glorious die here and here,
Yeah, but
maybe don't do that.
Well, there's
Or,
flying.
you know, another thing, like including tracers in your AA.
Yeah.
well, no, because the
ammunition.
British did, though. It's just the tracers didn't work in the Pacific.
And that's something to include.
Yes.
Question, probably for Cyclic. Was Tomahawk ever inertial guided, or has it always been GPS?
It was sort of imaging kind of guide, imaging and inertial. And what I mean by imaging is not modern imaging. It was terrain referential in its imaging. So the missiles would be preloaded with the terrain expected along their flight path, and they would be referencing the terrain they were seeing along their flight path with what they expected to see, and use that for guidance. And this requires a very precise firing fix on the location of firing.
And I assume this is terrain to include buildings.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, there goes that plan.
Buildings, landmarks, rivers, bridges, everything.
Lakes.
Because didn't a whole bunch of Tomahawks get shot down because they were following highways?
Yeah, because
that
there are
different?
excellent features for it in 91. Yeah.
The reason I asked is because if Tomahawk was, say, a pure INS system, right? You could, if you wanted to, and you could still make the INS guidance system packages, essentially turn the county into an arsenal ship with strike length VLS, rip everything else out that isn't needed to press play, and you could really work over the continental industry.
You're
with
also going to
those-
severely hurt the RN with that, though. That's the problem. You're taking one of their frontline cruisers out.
And honestly, she's more.
Oh.
Honestly, that one and done strike is actually less useful than the doctrinal information we'd send back otherwise by turning the ship into a floating library.
Yeah,
And-
without
Yeah, I'm
the
just
work,
saying,
keep
if
it
you wanted-
universal.
if you wanted to read the question as tightly as possible to its wording,
The other problem here with this Tomahawk thing is they have no means of gathering the information that is relevant for the missile flight paths that is also accurate for 1939. And you can't use modern data or even Cold War data, the massive archive of Cold War data that exists for Europe and Tomahawk.
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Can you use the German autobahns though?
What'd you say,
What was
Foxo?
that, Foxo?
Can you use the autobahns though?
It's not.
It's
No,
integrated.
what?
It's
yeah, that's why I asked if it was a pure INS system,
Yeah.
or if it was GPS, because
Pure INS gets you minute of city.
Yeah.
So
okay. Right. So that was a fairly deep dive into that. Typical gunnery officer asks, did they stop using canister shot on shells on tanks and cannons after World War II, or at least
No.
after Vietnam? Did they think the canister
Nope,
shot is
still
too
in
much of an
service.
overkill?
Still in service today.
and we just developed as my sorry,
What?
Fox, so go ahead.
The British took canister shot into Afghanistan.
And as my
It's
note
still
says,
in use today, and it was also the actually more Napoleonic style canister, as opposed to something that's more akin to a grape shot,
It didn't-
is
isn't the
actually a relatively sort of a 2008-2010 shell design that is available for the U.S. Navy 5 guns.
I'm
It's,
sorry, what?
Yeah.
Did you just say that
counter
the US...
drone counter? It's a counter drone counter unmanned surface / fast attack craft round that is designed to airburst and project a cone. The same tungsten ball bearings that are in the Abrams canister shot.
Welcome back,
Why
canister
Why would you do
rounds.
stuff like this?
It is a programmable fused round to help augment the programmable HE that is primarily used out of the gun in those roles to achieve a greater lethality, a greater effect lethality on the target.
Welcome back,
Um,
canister.
Also, Flea, I've
Yeah.
just got to point out, what do you mean, welcome back, canister? It
Yeah,
never
it's been
left.
around for
It never
it
left.
never left Fleet.
There's
Yeah.
nothing that can do it to replace it.
120mm shotgun.
question. I
I was
think
more talking about
Sigma's
canister
probably
at
the best.
sea. I was more talking about canister rounds
Uh,
at sea.
Yes, we've had fragmentation shot.
It's been around for a while. This was developed from the 5-inch 54 force protection, or BB rounds.
Right.
So for those who
Question-
are curious, this is the Mark 182 KEET round, kinetic energy electronically timed.
Question that Cyclical probably have the answer for. Doesn't the new 120 shell also have a fragmentation burst setting?
Yes,
The
but
multi-purpose
that shell is a full bore semi-armor piercing with a tungsten pre-cut fragmentation sleeve.
Okay.
But for reference, this is the KEET.
Oh dear. Oh my god. Oh my god.
been a lot of discussion about
9,013
things like this
grain
recently.
tungsten alloy pellets.
What did you say, Sheer? A lot of discussion?
I've seen quite a bit of discussion in like developmental space about stuff like this because they're very relevant to the return of SHORAD being quite necessary with drone conditions on the battlefield. So having these sort of programmable proximity shotgun rounds essentially is really, really good for bringing them down at a low cost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Particularly in the 57 to 76 millimeter range for stuff like this. They do a really good job.
Oh, wow. So I was actually right last week when I talked about basically strapping an automatic to the back of a truck and rolling around the countryside, blowing up drones at all altitudes.
Well, it's not going to get you all altitudes, but
it's going to get you more than a 20mm cannon will. 3-inch round goes further.
Three-inch round to 75.
I thought 3-inch was 76.
Or did I mishear you?
3-inch round is 76.
They're both around 3-inch.
Yeah, it's a millimeters difference. It's like quibbling over 303 and 308.
I know where this confusion is coming from. It's coming from the Sherman's guns. They were the same bore diameter. The difference in one was called a 76 and one was called a 75 was to keep people from putting the higher pressure ammo in the low pressure gun and having a very bad day in the turret as a result.
Yeah.
So the long-barreled 76 Shermans are not really
actually
changing.
A 75 millimeter gun.
Well, it's always was a 76. It's just now taking the high pressure ammunition.
Yeah, Flake.
Sure.
Can correct me if I'm wrong, but the 75 versus 76 is the same caliber because they're two different ways of measuring caliber, if I remember correctly.
No.
It's
literally an administrative designation difference.
They have to rename it so that people don't send wrong ammunition to wrong locations.
And there's a really good example of 6 and 2 when the Pershings got sent over and a 90 millimeter anti-tank gun unit got sent the wrong 90 millimeter shells.
Whoop!
They got the funny 215 90 millimeter shells.
90 millimeter anti-aircraft / direct fire anti-tank, but
is there anybody outside of myself, probably Cyclic and probably Foxo, that knows about the whole 10 gauge and 12 gauge ammunition?
I feel like
let's get back onto answering questions because we spent way too long on this original.
Look, I know it's ramblings and this is what we do, but
we have a schedule to keep.
Yes.
Hey, you're the one that needs to keep us on track.
I'm trying. Look, I don't like to interrupt.
You need to take a lot more charge.
Don't. Fleet is incapable of doing that.
Yeah, I know he's incapable. But we're telling him he needs to get better.
Look,
I did not put us on the 75 gun tangent.
Look,
what's the next question, Fleet?
Okay, yes, we'll do the next question. We're moving to the next question, but I do enjoy the tangents, so I let them run. Anyway, YouTube Minecraft Watcher. What if the USN in the 30s changed the AA on their ships from the 1.1 Chicago piano to the quadruple Bofors? In theory, it's possible the Bofors does exist in the mid-30s. After all, De Ruyter launches into service in the mid-30s carrying, I think,
the US has to do a lot of engineering and manufacturing effort, though, to make it a viable gun at the scale of this fleet.
Yeah.
I think it depends on how it affects how the US Navy would see a viable anti-aircraft suite. Because if they're replacing the Chicago piano with bigger medium AA, then they may believe that they can, functionally take other guns off to keep the same level of protection.
There's also the problem that you can't... Yeah, there's also a problem that you can't put a quad Bofors where you can put a Chicago piano. The size differential's just not the same.
Yeah, but we are not talking a quad Bofors yet.
No,
it says quad. It says quad. It says quad.
But as right. Let me finish it. Yes, you're definitely getting quad Bofors, but you will not be swapping every single gun for a quad Bofors. That just makes no sense because it's not physically possible.
That's what
I
we're
thought
saying.
That's
Yeah,
what the
no,
question
no, no.
says, though.
Yeah,
which is
that's what,
why
that's what we've been saying. We're addressing other things first.
All right, let Dragon finish his point.
Which is why I was going to go with the added context that this is more than just, yes, the US will now only use quad 40mm Bofors, because that makes no sense.
Correct.
Which is why I was going off the idea. No, never mind.
The other thing to point out is even after the 40mm Bofors hits the US fleet, there is a significant amount of time in combat where after action reports consider the 20mm Oerlikon to be a far more effective and efficient AA gun.
Yeah, there is a weird sort of...
And it's because the thing that made the 40mm Bofors amazing was the fire direction.
Yeah, the volume of fire differential definitely feels like it would be much more important without that sort of fire direction technology later on.
Yeah.
Like, honestly...
The ability to quickly and accurately lay guns on targets, kill targets, and move on and engage other targets wasn't there yet. Even around Guadalcanal, you still have, like, as Drac has pointed out, pretty consistently, in multiple different videos, when you look through the after action reports of Enterprise, they're not clamoring for more 40 mils, and Enterprise had 40 mils. They're clamoring for more Oerlikons, to the point of even advocating removing any remaining ship to get more Oerlikons.
So in the short term, in relation to the question, then, it would probably be better to replace the Chicago pianos with Oerlikons whenever possible, rather than to replace them with 40s, at least in the early years of the theatre of operations.
Yeah.
Honestly?
Particularly since when you're putting the Oerlikons in, you can also get rid of Browning water-cooled 50 cals and put them in.
Yeah,
That's the key point.
Yeah, here's the thing. Like, Chicago pianos, the problem wasn't so much the guns themselves, it's just that there weren't really enough of them. If you look at some of the early attempts to upgun USAA fits on their ships as the war begins and as ships are coming into service, they're adding more 1.1s.
It wasn't a terrible gun in its role. It's just, it gets overshadowed by the 40mm because of how good the 40mm ended up back end.
Yeah.
And the other thing is the 40mm's rate of fire for its weight, along with its throw weight of shell, is so good. It's not that the Chicago piano was like the Japanese 25mm.
And even then, the Japanese 25mm, despite all of its flaws, is not as terribly terrible as people sometimes make it out to be. It's not world beating, but it can throw shells
In the role
down
the
range.
Japanese forced it into, it was pretty terrible fleet.
Damn it. No, my argument is
like,
destroyed. Fuck. Not again!
They were using it in the role the Chicago piano was used in, and then also the role like the 40mm or the pom-pom. It's not the worst in that category. That still goes to the German single-shot, manually thrown bolt 37mm. But I think everybody can understand why that gun was so bad.
It's just, why would you do this?
Territory.
Particularly when they also already had an automatic 37mm available in their military.
Yeah. The funniest thing to me I do find, while we're just on the topic of Axis AA, is that one of the very rare moments where the Axis actually does shit together was the 20mm rounds. All of their AA guns use the same 20mm rounds. The only thing they managed to get together on. Why that one thing?
On a side note, but since we're talking about Axis and AA here, my favorite naval AA gun of the, not because it's good, although it's not terrible, is the Italian 90 mil like stabilized gun mount. Like I just find that whole thing just hilarious, and I love it for the same reason I love the Kinda class guided missile cruisers of the Soviet Union with their torpedo tube style turrets and the reloading mechanism.
I will admit the goofy single 90mm biscuit tins are very, very funny.
But I think we've beat this question.
We have. Typical gunnery officer opinions. Now this is an interesting question. I've never heard of these guys before, but hopefully some of you people have. Typical gunnery officer opinions on the United States Navy underwater demolition teams in World War II. Do you think they are the predecessors to the Navy SEALs, and they are
considered to be,
and were underrated and underappreciated service in World War II that was rarely talked about? Considering I've never heard of them, that is quite rarely talked about. Did the USN UDT copy their British counterparts in terms of operational methods, organization, etc., or did the USN develop the UDT concept on their own? Gunnery officer, I'm just going to put this out there. That is one of the best questions you've asked in a while. No bias, no leading, an exceptionally interesting topic. More like this, please.
Finally, a good question.
Well, I know nothing on this.
So they are considered, they are by lineage at least, considered to be the predecessors to the SEALs. That's where the SEALs draw their lineage from. And that's where they took it in Vietnam. Literally, they drew their lineage to that. But the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps have had a history of attempting to maintain some sort of underwater sabotage capability for a while. And they knew pre-World War II when they were thinking about, okay, how do we fight in the Pacific? Okay, amphibious operations are going to be a huge part of that. Well, okay, we need people who can engage and destroy underwater obstacles off the beaches. We may need special forces that can deal with ships at anchor or stuff like that. So I can't really speak to did they copy British stuff, because I don't know. Let me be frank about that. But they certainly identified the need and what they wanted out of them, and that does drive how you're going to approach stuff. And they did a lot of beach reconnaissance, a lot of covert mine disposal off of landing beaches, covert reconnaissance.
As I recall, after
sabotage
Nautilus
they did a lot of that.
Some of the Marine units to do like funny island sneak stuff at night. They stopped doing that with the Marines because it was something like 2 submarines to drop maybe a platoon if you cram them all in like sardines. Instead, they started using much smaller squads and elements to do that, and that's where a lot of the UDT started to actually shine, is where they'd be sneakily inserted by a submarine, spend a day or two reconning the area, and then go in and do that really fun World War II era high-speed bullshit. As I mentioned, I'm fairly certain that instead of copying the British, a lot of the way that they use the UDTs is actually more inspired by the Italian frogmen, both earlier in the war and during the First World War. One of the Tagethovs was sunk by one of the pseudo predecessors to the Italian frogmen. Literally, I believe the day after or the day before it was to be handed to Italy as a war prize, ironically. But yeah, it's they were very cool. They did lots of cool shit. But yes, they were also, as Cyclic mentioned, not directly preceding, but a lot of their operational usage and the way that they conduct their operations is directly inspired by the UDTs for the SEALs. Even if they, as a unit lineage, don't line up because of how unit lineages can work. No, they weren't really deployed to
They weren't.
Normandy.
They were pretty fully occupied with stuff going on in the Pacific.
It's also a case of like when it came to like Europe, the SAS and the SBS were doing almost exactly the same stuff, and there's less coral and shit in Europe than there is in the Pacific,
Big kaboom.
as well as other things. And the SAS and the SBS had been doing that for easily 2 years before America entered the war. So they were pretty good at doing it in Europe.
What did you say, shit?
I wonder what sort of divergent lessons you get there. The SBS is operating in the European theatre, and the UDT is operating primarily in the Pacific.
I suppose it would be distance to operational area and how you have to conduct
Water
that.
temperature.
Yeah, that as well.
Because the water temperature, the environmental factors such as water temperature, wind speeds can vary quite differently in the Pacific to the Channel and the North Sea. Currents are different as well.
Positional patterns are going to be different on beaches.
Density of the water to a degree, the magnetics of the water. There's also other things like the enemy that you are fighting. No enemy that you will fight in a war is going to be exactly the same as the last one. This is something that America had to learn quite quickly in Vietnam, because they went into Vietnam fighting as though it was the Second World War or Korea. More akin to Korea than the Second World War, which is why they had a lot of very important lessons that we're still seeing today in how they conduct certain operations. So the enemy that you fight can be very different, and you have to adapt your tactics or adapt how you utilize certain things. You need to adapt codes. Some nation may be better at breaking codes than a former one, so it's easier to maintain operational security. Or it's just easier to speak the language and to pretend to be one of them. It's easier to pose as a German for an East Coast American than it is to pose as a Japanese soldier.
Even at a distance.
Even at a distance, there's a lot of different factors that you've got to take into account to adapt and to change. That's also one of the reasons that the CIDG in Vietnam came to be such an important aspect of South Vietnamese operations, because they knew the jungle, they knew the territory better than the South Vietnamese army, better than ARVN, better than the Americans did. They knew the disposition of the local villages and were better at actually employing that knowledge and the standing they had far better than any American unit could. Which is why they were so important.
Oh yeah, gunnery officer. That yeah, the modified Clemson and Wixers, and later the modified Fletchers.
Special Forces Fletcher is such a good meme.
I mean, they weren't even Special Forces craft, not all of them. They were basically there to go and take islands that were literally just an atoll with a building on it and a radar station. You don't need an entire amphibious task force. What you do need is some naval gunfire support, some landing craft, and something to get them there. Oh, what if we remove 3 of the 5-inch guns from a Fletcher?
I forget which Aki, but they were essentially just Fletchers that had been modified to take the Wix and not the Wix, you literally said it and my brain has forgotten it. Thank you. Like instead of having like certain numbers of small craft, it would, or I think one of them had like its torpedo tube swapped just to have so many of them.
No,
because they could just send out like 3 or 4.
No, there was an actual class. They actually created.
Yeah, but the basis of the modification was just removing certain weapons.
Yeah, because basically they wanted some 5-inch guns for gunfire support organically. They wanted some light AA. They didn't need torpedoes. They didn't need torpedoes, so they got rid of them. And I think they kept depth charges in case they ran into subs. But apart from that, the standard config was, I think, 4 Higgins boats. That was your standard complement. 4 Higgins boats plus accommodation for the amount of troops plus some spares and supplies that those Higgins boats could accommodate. And the idea was you'd rock up to a tiny island that literally that force is still overmatched for, and take it.
There you go.
Yeah, like the Crossleys are an example of that, but they're not exactly. Let me see.
As a complete non sequitur, I just got stabbed 3,000 times with a laser, and now everything smells burnt.
Okay.
It'll do that.
Right. Moving.
Dysphoria is a hell of a drug.
Yes.
All right, moving on.
Yes, probably.
Yeah, I think we've covered that one.
We've hammered it into the ground. Yay! Another question violated.
Fleet, never say that again, please.
Yeah, please never.
Never
just
say
realised
that again.
God damn it, I
Again.
walked into that one. Bloody hell.
On a happier note, I was just reading about the UDTs meeting space capsules when they came back into land. They would attach flotation collars and so they were quite used a lot in the civilian time as well.
Very nice.
And some of those times they were operating out of a reused Essex, which is also cool.
Yay.
Yes, and there's a good example of them picture-wise on the Wikipedia page with them hopping straight out of a helicopter, which I imagine gives them quite a bit of operational flexibility.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Helicopter boys.
Oh, there's a whole fun tangent we could go down of the history of amphibious warfare, but I will save that for another time.
9831, in a timeline where the British don't decline and we're in the position of the US, what OTL ideas the British did wouldn't get done. So first things first, even in a timeline where the British don't decline, where they managed to pull off the transition from Empire to Commonwealth, the US and the Soviet Union will probably still be there. So first things first, the British will not be in the position that the US is in a hypothetical Cold War where the British are a third bloc, a third superpower.
I think they'd still be allied with the US. Honestly,
Oh yeah, they would be, but they'd be very much
It
in
would
this.
be very helpful.
Yeah.
For everybody.
But
One of the things that people tend to forget about this is that, strictly speaking, on an industrial and economic basis, the US had already outstripped the UK and the British Empire retire, at least industrially in the mid 30s.
earlier than that.
Yeah.
Oh, and yeah, no, industrially it was the 20s, just before the Depression.
Earlier than
Economically,
that.
it was.
No, seriously, it's actually kind of surprising. The US basically has this jump in the 1900s where they basically go from being peer to absolutely annihilating British output in basically all sectors. In the 1900s and 1910s.
Yeah, on some level, it's a bit tragic.
I actually didn't know that.
I thought it was the 20s.
The
And it
thing
was
about-
early in the century. I didn't know it was that early.
Yeah, because I looked into it for some research I was doing regarding steel production. And when I went to look for the figures for steel production, I found the figures for everything else, and yeah, it's honestly shocking.
Oh yeah, steel production, we started falling, I think, in like
Yeah,
the 1890s relative in terms of growth rate and overall numbers.
It's also a bit more complicated than that, Fleet. Because it depends on how you define the output of the British Empire. What do you count as wet?
I mean, to be fair, I am going off goods you would mostly produce in the metropoles. So, if there's high quality steel, manufactured goods. So that basically limits you to places like Canada. So the British Empire at that point consists of Canada, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, basically the areas that are the white settler colonies of the British Empire. So you're talking about stuff like, basically, I was looking at stuff like steel, coal, iron ore, lumber.
You're not any of the colonies. You're looking at the home isles in India at that point.
I think the only way that I can see, back to the question specifics, is the British Empire is on a peer-to-peer basis with the US. Is if we do the Federation.
Yeah, I still think we'd be outscaled economically due to how
Yeah,
stratified things were, because we can't keep doing the take resources, manufacture them, sell them back to the empire thing, because as complexity of consumer goods increases, as does the price, and we're just not seeing the purchasing power of the colonies and dominions increase at a rate which would allow that to, sustain a large advanced export market from the UK alone.
What you would basically have to do in order to get a Britain that's close enough to the US for this to be, the thing that's happening, you need the Federation to gobble up the settler colonies, and you'd need, the So you don't remember setting the colonies: South Africa, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and then you'd have to have the British continue to follow the independence Commonwealth plan for the rest of the colonies, because at that point, while yes, okay, look, they're independent nations and they wouldn't be being exploited as much, because look, I'm under no illusions. I've said this before. The original Empire to Commonwealth plan was just imperialism and colonialism cloaked in the
Why are you
vanity.
clarifying it? Fair enough.
You could so to keep things. I think that when it came to it, federation to Commonwealth, but the Commonwealth is more like the European Union than the Commonwealth of Nations as we know it today. So it maintains that very strong economic tie between all the nations.
Yeah.
And gives them that freedom of movement, Keeley, as well as the freedom of goods.
Yeah.
That's I think the only way. However, when it comes to what original timeline ideas the British wouldn't get done,
No through-deck cruisers for a start.
there probably wouldn't be through-deck cruisers. We'd probably maintain a fleet that was capable enough to, at least not on a hull for hull, match the
You
US.
wouldn't have a choice.
You talk
Not so much on match the US, but just because of the Soviets and the reality of your empire.
You basically have
The fleet you would need.
You will need India, frankly. You need to unfuck, control, and industrialize India to have the pure population to do it.
but just look.
There's some
Assuming
criticisms I have with industrializing India. If you do it to take advantage of the lower, cost to manufacture, and so you threaten undercutting the home miles manufacturing industry.
yeah, that's. I mean,
Oh,
she is right. In order to actually get a peer with, look, let's not get into the weeds of the how. Let's get onto the whole timeline ideas. Let's assume that the British are a peer to the US or near peer. Let's just for now. We've had a lot of discussion on the how. Let's whitewash that for now. I know you've got things to say, Foxo, but we have dug into that. Okay, one more, and then I'm moving on to...
Point, we're not talking about the British Empire being a peer to the Americans. We're talking about the Indian Empire being a rival to the Americans.
Anyway, so moving back to... Yes, she has got a point there, but... you've not got... Oh, still British ideas that didn't get... You've probably not got any adoption of US systems into the British Navy in terms of fleet air arm aircraft or aircraft generally, because at the scale of production we're talking to maintain a fleet and armed forces and air force, there is enough manufacturing clout available to keep solely British designs in the British Imperial Forces, and that's basically everything: land, sea, and air.
Strategic autonomy would be a much stronger thing in this British Empire.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the Second World War, we had a superpower-sized manufacturing base, but only the demand for regional power, which led to the quite famous decline of the many different British
Not only
manufacturing
that, but
industries in the 50s.
You had
military ones, at least.
You had an economy that was rapidly and uncomfortably adjusting to that new reality too.
Oh yeah, we had big problems with balance of payments crises.
Yeah, and so there was a lot of financial pressure on the government to not go out and spend money because there wasn't a lot of money to go.
Yeah.
But if we can spend, proper independent nuclear program for one.
Oh yeah, completely.
Very interesting seeing how we do if we go
we'll
down
have
the
we will have a triad.
uh,
We will absolutely have a triad.
SSBNs. Because we'd need our own fully independent targeting systems, which means a space program, which means something transit. It would be very interesting in that area.
We'd actually have LHDs. I suspect we actually would have LHDs. Proper LHDs, like, the US has. I would find it surprising if we didn't. OTL, so we're talking about OTL ideas that the British did, not happening. Well, you absolutely wouldn't get the cancellation of TSR2. Now, and the reason I'm saying TSR2 is because a platform like that is incredibly useful to a superpower nation, as the US proved with what the F-111 got up to. A fast interdiction strike platform is exceptionally useful to a great power state, or a superpower state.
You're not getting TSR2.
Well, no, I was using BSR2 as an example of a British equivalent, or near equivalent. It wouldn't actually be TSR2. I was using it as the closest thing we got to a peer to the F-111. I know it's not. I know it's only within shouting distance.
Oh, did you just call TSR2 in the same league as the 111?
No, I called it within shouting distance, which means it's right.
Within shouting distance means they're peer. Like,
No peer. means...
Not necessarily. It means slightly
Not
beneath.
necessarily.
I would say what we would see, interestingly, would be, and this is already getting really weird because we're more than a decade down the line.
I know, but this is
without
what we
the
do.
massive problems which came from the 56, 57 defense white papers, that sort of thing. We do a lot of shifts in the 60s towards looking to collaborate with other nations in development. We work with the French to try and create the AFVG, the Anglo-French Variable Geometry Aircraft, which realistically was what we were thinking we were going to take instead of the 111 after a certain point. But that collapsed, and at that point we didn't have the scale to internally do the spin-off UK VG program, which in turn, through various talking to people, turned into the Panavia Tornado about another decade down the line.
Yay.
But it would mean that we would see a lot of things coming through a lot sooner because we wouldn't have to rely on an awful lot of concessions and collaboration with the other European powers.
Yeah, that's basically, and I was thinking, because the problem is, it's not, because I love the way the question's phrased, because it's deliberately, it's not what's going to happen, it's what happened historically is now not going to happen. That's the interesting thing. I don't think you see British silo-based ICBMs go away, ever. So, as you know, Britain did operate during the Cold War historically, land-based IRBMs. Which obviously, I know they're not ICBMs, but just roll with me here. But we got rid of them, and we moved over to bomber-based and fleet-based nuclear deterrent. Whereas in this, where we are a peer deterrent force in a nuclear world operates a triad, or it is not a peer force.
oh god, no, that's cursed. That is cursed.
Question is, where... As a British Imperial Federation, where the hell do you put the silo fields?
Sudan.
That's a really good
Sudan.
question, actually. We have so many different strategic priorities.
Multiple
So much
silo
stuff.
fields.
Sudan.
Australia.
Have you heard of this place that's
Australia
massive?
is not the place you want to put them.
No, it's
Relatively,
too far out.
I think Foxo's right, actually. Put them in the Sudan. If we still have the Empire. I can almost hear the cogs
That
turning.
could be something that could happen later as missile technology develops. Early on, you're not going to be able to do that, and that also kind of gives up some advantages of making the Soviets extremely uncomfortable.
What did you have in mind?
By basing intermediate range missiles like you guys did with Thor, in the UK, even in this much closer knit super state, for lack of a better term, it will be a lot easier to base controversial weapons like this on the home territory. Sudan, there's less population, but the technology isn't there for those long-range shots yet very easily. Particularly if you're trying to do counter force or counter industrial or counter military and command and control stuff. You know, because now you're on the U.S. and Soviet. You have the potential to be on the U.S. and Soviet level. Maybe not exactly as an equal, but as a near peer. The U.S. one is going to love this. The Soviet Union is going to hate this.
If the Soviets basically be forced into a position where there actually is a missile gap now, they're just done, basically.
No, they're going to have to get very creative. Like the U.S. is probably going to have to get going forward as the Chinese rapidly expand their arsenal. But by keeping missiles in the UK, you have an ability to strike Soviet targets in Europe and in Russia or the Soviet Union proper with very little warning time. Warning time that makes it very uncomfortable for the and this is one of the reasons why, for the very, very minor price of removing obsolete missiles from, the US was able to extract such a big concession from the Soviet Union during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
I'm going to ask...
just very quickly, I actually very quickly need to address something. Knight, you need to forget anything you think you know about historical systems and weapons. This British imperial state is so far different in terms of industrial capability, procurement requirements, and availability of funding and capital that we likely don't see anything we historically recognize as systems employed by the British Armed Forces. In this
no.
Essentially the Lee Enfield.
Yeah, well, no, we would see at least two things. We would see the continuation of Centurion and Conqueror, because hell, we can actually pay for Conqueror. The British Army wants Conqueror or Centurion. And two, you'd probably see a successor to the B-bombers.
Well, no, that's the thing. I don't think you see the historical
B-bombers. I think you see something completely different.
Yep.
But before we go too awfully far afield, I'd like to ask one question, and then we can knock this one over the head. If Sudan, as the country currently sits, is a rough approximation of its borders in 1945, I mean this in the nicest way, but can you even support silos in Sudan?
We will build the railways. We will build...
that fleet that does not...
I know.
It's so much more beyond that.
Yeah,
the amount of security, the amount of supply for that...
The amount of on-hand labor you need to build and maintain these things.
I think while it could theoretically be done, there are much better places you'd want to put it anyway. Because why are we thinking of Sudan in the first place? Because it's quite far away. In terms of range, it's not that much of a problem, just putting it somewhere else.
I mean, in theory,
Northern India.
I mean,
I was just measuring
just
Northern
south
India.
of the Himalayas.
You can catch basically the entirety of the useful part of the middle of the Soviet Union within missile range there.
I mean, also to be fair, we could honestly, given one of the strengths of one of the big strengths that this hypothetical British state has compared to the other superpowers is the spread outness of it. We don't have to have
That's not an advantage fleet.
Well, no, in this particular, just let me. You could chew me out in a second. Just let me roll, and then you can put the word shivs in. Just give me a second. You could have smaller silos fields or clusters of silos spread across the empire to cover different key strategic objectives and be deterrent in different areas. So you could have a field in India, a small field in the Australian outback, a small field in Sudan, fields in the UK. To point missiles at different people.
Gunnery officer made a good point just recently. He mentioned maybe putting them in Cyprus.
Yeah, put some in Cyprus. Put some fields in Cyprus.
Usually,
So,
Cyprus
for
is a really,
reference,
really bad place to put silos.
if you don't need silos there, you can use trailer-mounted intermediate or medium-range missiles there.
Wait a minute.
I
But
thought we talked about actual
just
silo fields, like
just on the
intercontinental.
just on the silo-based thing, one that really only becomes a big thing later on, or actually around the time of Minuteman I, both with the Soviet Union and the U.S. And I'm using those as a comparison here because those were the people in this time period throwing money into them. So with Minuteman I's 10,200 kilometer range, you could comfortably base these in central India and maintain the ability to do all sorts of funky trajectory stuff over most of the Soviet.
Permission to ask a completely derailing,
And
off-topic
hit
question to
all
move
of
to
the
next
Soviet
question?
Union easily.
I feel we've been on this question for quite a while.
Yes, and I have a very stupid. I have a question which is probably going to be extremely ignorant, but I'm also shocked enough that I need to ask it.
Okay, I did want to talk about.
Is there more than one Mount Olympus in the Mediterranean?
Not as far as I'm aware.
Yes, there is.
There is.
Yep.
Because I'm seeing one in Cyprus, and I really didn't think it was in Cyprus.
Olympos,
Yes, there is
Troodos, and Litotro? Litotro? I have no idea how that's pronounced, but 2 in Greece, 1 in Cyprus.
And
Okay,
if you
really?
go
And
if
one
you
on
go to the
Mars.
Greek colonies in France, there's also one in the Alps, though that's not called Mount Olympus anymore.
Okay, if I can really quickly close out the silo thing.
Yes, very
With
quick.
Minuteman I, you are not able to hit most of the important parts of the Soviet Union from. Just to close all of that out.
Yes.
I
Timu.
think the place to go put them is India.
Yeah.
India covers everything.
I
Furthest
did
range
want
is
to
like
talk
900
about.
kilometers.
I did want to briefly touch on the completely different way the British bomber force would go, but I feel like that would be pushing it a little too much.
You are.
Yeah, I think we should do another question.
Moving
I
on
think you're
swiftly.
going to see something comparable to what the US does.
This question's been a bit undirected, I would say. 'cause
That's
it's
kind of
quite-
how we do.
But even then.
questions like that. Yeah, Timu.
But I'm
What is the favorite drink for Fridays for panel members? Coca-Cola Zero and cider for me on a Friday.
A good bit.
How is the week gone, good or bad?
That's true. It could be
let's-
spirits.
Let's say bad.
Lots and lots of bourbon and rum.
Then that's me.
Okay,
That's me.
I'm sorry. You're all peasants. I have a 2-liter bottle of Dr. Pepper. I've got half a liter of Jack Daniels.
Oh
I've
my-
got half a liter of Bailey's.
Oh
I
my-
don't. I expect Dragon's going to have a very liquid me tonight.
Okay. Moving on. 968.
I'd go for a good Mai Tai.
Foxo, have you ever heard of vodka?
Now,
No.
if the week's gone well, a nice Long Island.
That's the worst cocktail you could have chosen. Congratulations.
Oh my goodness.
I just like the flavor. I also like watching my coworkers try to keep up with me with it.
Oh dear.
At that point, you fucking
That was a
Jacob.
good palate cleanser of a question.
Yeah.
Actually, do you want some Guinness? That's actually really nice.
Hang on. All right. Yes. Okay. Please speak. I need 2 minutes because the dog is absolutely going balmy. I don't want to see what's wrong with her. So talk about yourselves for a minute about drinks.
Combine
I know how to make
Malt
cocktails, and it's good.
combine single malt Scotch, 2 parts, with 1 part Jaeger bomb.
That sounds. I mean, I don't like Jaeger bombs, so I'm biased, but that sounds grim.
I introduced vodka to my D&D world because I found it so ridiculous.
Right. I have one thing which has bugged me tons about cocktails in general. People will buy pre-mixed mojitos. It is stupid. It is just 1.5 shots of white rum, half a shot of like simple syrup, half a lime squeezed and some mint. It is like 4 ingredients. It is piss. It's so easy to make. Do not buy pre-mixed stuff. Mix it yourself. You'll save so much money.
Yes, but that takes effort.
It
If I'm
takes
trying
like
to get
2
shit
minutes.
faced, if I'm trying to get shit faced, I don't want to be thinking while I'm getting shit
Then
faced.
pre-mix it in a large quantity and then use it to just refill your glass as you go at the start.
He does have a point. As much as I may not want to admit it, as an also lazy person, he does unfortunately have a point.
They'll charge you like £7 to £10, depending on where you are for a mojito, and they cost like unit cost is like $2.30 to make.
Yeah. How do you think bars stay in business?
I honestly, at the moment, they're not. Most of them are going out, but it's still absurd. Ah, the uncomfortable silence.
Also, Cyclic, if you ever somehow wind up in my neck of the woods, I've got a restaurant that you would probably greatly appreciate.
Oh, I've been there. I've got family there, so.
Right. Thank you, everyone, for keeping conversations going. I much appreciate it.
We really didn't.
We tried our best.
We started talking about alcohol, but yeah, there's a little hole in the wall restaurant.
Oh, dear.
There was dead silence for about 10 seconds. The rest of it there was something there.
That's good. That's good. Right. Okay.
I want my supersonic V bombers. Okay.
Anyway. Okay. Right.
Supersonic Delta Wings go burr.
96831 asks, is it accurate to say that the Project 629 Golf class SSB submarines were really the USSR trying to bolster its fleet and to see if a diesel electric was viable as a ballistic missile submarine? No, it's not, because the Golfs were the first. The Golfs were the first. They were the standard bearer for the ballistic missile submarine as a concept. They came before the hotels, which are the nuclear versions of the Golf. They came before anyone basically anywhere else considered a ballistic missile submarine for delivering nuclear weapons. All the other submarines that had been nuclear delivery platforms prior to that had been cruise missile equipped. The Golfs are, I believe, and I can be corrected if I'm wrong here, the first ballistic missile submarines ever taken into service by any navy anywhere. The long silence is not filling me with confidence.
I am checking as we speak.
I have no opinion, and I'm trying to not get noited.
They were the first true service ones rather than experimentals, yes.
Yeah.
And they had a lot of problems, but that is utterly unsurprising because of how early they were. But
being diesel electric, they're also a bit, little bit on the shonkier side.
Oh my god, that Chinese Wuhan class is goofy. That is... that is...
So, here's the interesting thing about it. It's firing exoset clones, and it has to surface to do it. 43 kilometers, within 43 kilometers of the target. So that's an interesting series of trade-offs. There aren't many air defense vessels out there when she was completed that can deal with a salvo of 6 exosets with anything other than passive defenses, electronic warfare, and chaff, right? Because we're talking about a missile that flies like 6 feet off the water. So at least not deal with them reliably. And they're unlike the Echoes or the Juliets, where they have to provide mid-course guidance. This sub doesn't. It can fire and submerge, but the problem is it's derived from a Romeo, so it's a diesel electric sub, so it can't run very fast, which means it can't get far from the launch location. So it's almost certainly going to die, but you're trading a relatively cheap and easy to build submarine for potentially a cruiser or another high value asset, whether that's an amphib or something like that. And if the submarine's well skippered or the enemy doesn't have any helicopters up, right? And your enemy isn't the Russians to where they fire back with Rastrub or Silex, which would be exactly what the Soviet Navy would do, then you very well could get away. In that case, and if it's the Soviet Navy ship, those 6 Exocet clones are going to clobber it.
Good night, Vienna. Do not pass go. Do not collect 200
unless
rubles.
they're EW. Now, granted, this is unless their EW and systems work. And one thing to note about Soviet ships is, and I think I might be able to get a photo here briefly. Let's see, does this one have any of the obvious antennas? No. What about the Sun? No, the Sovereign doesn't have the obvious.
Can we get a
antennas
picture
either.
of this on the stream as well? Because it looks.
I
really
was
clunky.
looking to get a photo here real quick in game. Let me
that would work.
there we
grab one.
I adore the long bins that pop.
Oh my god! I will save that image and I'll bring it up on
I'm
the stream.
specifically looking for a
What
photo
channel
that
are you
shows
trying
the
to
electronic warfare
post things in?
antennas they festooned habitually over a lot of their ships. I need an image that's large enough and good enough lighting.
Whiskey.
What are you trying to?
Tequila.
This.
Here we go. Well, that's not what
It's
I'm
the
talking
funny-
about.
I'm putting it up. This is a Chinese attempt to basically, well, this is what we've been talking about. This is the Chinese boat with the X-Set clones in the funny box. It
is not an equivalent to the Soviet.
No, it's not.
But that's also a good thing for it.
Yeah, because the thing is, the Golf is the Golf's a strategic deterrence asset.
And we're not comparing it to the Gulf. It'd be the Echo or the Juliet classes.
Yeah.
Specifically, really, the Juliet, or the Whiskey Long Bin, or the Whiskey Twin Cylinder, or the Whiskey Single Cylinder. And the Whiskey Twin Cylinder was the most common SSG derivative of the Whiskey.
Because
not the Whiskey Long Bin, which is what Seed Otters just posted.
Because I'm looking at that and I'm going, I think I know why you're saying it's not equivalent. Because that sub can launch blind fire and be gone.
Well, also, it's a much shorter range sea skimming missile compared to Shadok.
Are we talking about ballistics or guidance?
These are anti-ship missiles.
Yeah, we're on a tangent down cruise missile submarine hell.
Yes,
But
we're on a very.
Should we bring ourselves back onto topic?
I will just show this image of all of the Kirov's radars. Because Kirov has all of the radars, and you will accept the radiation.
What are we talking about Kirov for?
You've just posted an image of Kirov.
That's not a Kirov. That's Vice Admiral Draw's a Cresta 1.
Oh god, it is! I have been fooled! I have been fooled.
It has an arm launcher.
I did not see the arm launcher, I have to admit.
And what I have circled there in that image, you'll see sort of these bulbous antenna in that circled area, and that is their primary defense. And it is very powerful jamming in, to the point where they don't want anybody out deck when they flip them.
Good lord.
Or out on deck of any nearby ships.
Yeah. That is all of the radiation.
That would be their primary defense against these, until you start getting to, realistically, Tor coming out into the Soviet surface.
Typical gunner officer asks, opinions on the Sidewinder air-to-ground variant, and why didn't the US develop it further until it's
sidearm?
able to be introduced or deployed? Since
It was deployed. Sidearm was deployed. It's a anti-radiation missile that the Harriers and the U.S. Marine Corps Cobras use.
Well, there
Was
you are.
Phoenix the IR seeker?
No, Phoenix.
No, that was a radar.
Yeah, Phoenix is the $1 million missile.
Yeah. So what Sidearm did was replace the infrared seeker with a passive anti-radiation seeker.
For those of you listening, this is the AGM 122 sidearm.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's really only like a self-defense sort of seed weapon. Like if you get locked, you can fire it off to hopefully force the battery to turn their radar. And hopefully the missile takes care of the radar that's locking you so you can get away.
Would that be useful against Soviet radar-directed gun vehicles like Shilka and Tunguska?
Yeah. The continuous rod warhead on it will rip them apart barely. There have been some other air-to-ground old, like the Germans did this to get a cheap precision-guided weapon during, and relatively low collateral weapon during their involvement in Afghanistan, because they had a whole bunch of like AIM-9Ls that were surplus to requirements, and they were like, well, we can just put a laser seeker on it and call it a day. I think they changed the warhead out too for just HE rather than a continuous rod, but I could be wrong there. So there are some, and the U.S. did field it as a seed weapon. To have done anything more, I mean, you can already lock a Sidewinder heat return. So, particularly with like AIM-9X's pseudo imaging infrared.
Yeah.
It just doesn't really offer much.
No.
Looks like a decent economy missile, if anything.
It's not, because it's air-to-air. It's an air-to-air weapon at heart. You know, you can kind of get into this same lethality package, if not a more lethal laser guidance kit for Hydra 70, like APKWS, and that's a darn sight cheaper, to the point where they've started fitting proxy fuses to them as well for anti-drone use, both surface to air and air to air.
If
drones and
sidearm
cruise missiles
wasn't economically competitive, then what was the rationale for trying to convert the AIM-9Cs into it?
It was the only weapon that could be like carried in this sort of, for this target set by Harrier and Cobra. You're not going to fit a harm onto a Harrier reasonably well, and you're certainly not doing it. It was just an easy way to get them surprise Shilka, or even more concerningly, surprise Osa. And it was viewed as very necessary for them, so they could still do their jobs.
So a desperately needed, or desperately perceived needed, capability in a form factor that things could actually carry.
Yeah, and with the density of air defenses that Soviets put in their units, it would have been. Because the Air Force would have had a lot of other to do. So,
I'd say that's quite comprehensive.
Yeah.
Indeed. Right, so next question. You should Minecraft Watcher. What was the best example in the Age of Sail of that size doesn't matter? aka a frigate or two versus a second rate and somehow won. Well, it's not going to be second or first rate. The problem with any size of frigates fighting a second or third rate is just the sheer level of bang that second or third rate will unleash if it gets a good broadside away. Like
even a partial broadside.
Like a third rate, 2 frigates could bully, because at that point a large frigate or 2 medium-sized frigates against a third rate, you've got enough mass, and the third rate doesn't have the sheer death-defying salvo weight of a second or first rate that you can jump it. But second or first rates are just non-starters. A single well-placed salvo and well-timed salvo shatters even the largest frigates. Just completely, you're gone.
Well, then what's the
even just
the
that
most
lower gun deck?
That's not the word. What's the largest difference that we know of a small vessel taking a large one in the Age of Sail?
That would probably be Indefatigable and her half-sister taking on a French third rate as it attempted to run troops to Ireland. Drac talked about it in his video on Indefatigable. They took advantage of the fact that the ship couldn't open its lower gun decks in the sea state, but they could use but as heavily built Razé frigates, they could use all their gun decks in the sea state. And also the fact that the third rate was heavily loaded down with troops and supplies.
I think that's kind of cheating, though. I'm not sure I can call that
because they're Razés.
Size doesn't matter because they're Razés.
Yeah.
Cut down birds.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose you could say, because wasn't one of the US big frigates taken by a significantly smaller frigate than it because of good seamanship? I think one of the...
I don't remember. I'm not all that familiar.
Yeah, this is one of those things that is a little bit outside of my wheel. Foxo, have you got something?
Are you talking about President? Because the ship that catches President is her side.
Okay, so then in that case, then no.
President also isn't a full big frigate either.
Damn it. Does anyone have anything? Because at this point, I'm leaning into my pocket for the card that says "Refer this question to Alex and Drac."
I would say refer it to Drac and Alex. Yeah.
I thought.
Question: does it have to be a naval battle?
It does seem to be. Yeah, it's Age of Sail naval battles. Yeah. Go on, Ruin on. Hang on, Foxo. Ruin on. You first.
Well, Foxo's already on a tear, so I'll get back to my point in a minute. But
Sorry.
go ahead, Foxo.
Could you call the French cavalry charge on the Dutch fleet a naval battle? Because they were at sea. They were just frozen out.
That is quite a disparity there.
We could call that one. Yeah, that could work.
But to Cyclic's, to my point to Cyclic's point, wasn't President still built to the same line as Constitution? And
no, I don't believe so.
Let me have a look.
I believe she was a commission ship.
Was the odd duck out?
Yeah, I believe she was a commission ship.
Let's have a look. No, no, Cyclic. President was one of the big frigates.
Yeah, I was about to say. I know she's part of the, broadly speaking, Constitution class.
Okay.
Yeah, she's
They were
I don't
not
know much about this period of the U.S. Navy. So.
Yeah,
she's a 44 gun frigate of approximately 1,500 tons,
with all 24-pounders on her gun decks and carronades on her upper deck. Yeah, she is a big frigate. But there we go. Interesting little tidbit there. Right, so
she was acquired by the British on the 15th of January, 1815.
A fine addition to our collection.
Bastards.
Typical gunnery officer. Question.
That's a good meme, gunnery.
Opinions on the Mark 26 launchers on the Flight 1 Tychos. Do you think the full capability of the Aegis system are limited by the twin-arm launchers, and not until the arrival of Mark 1 VLS they could finally unleash the full Aegis system capabilities to be able to fire missiles at multiple targets simultaneously?
That has nothing to do with the launchers. That has everything to do with the directors, and they were easily able to do that with the Mark 26s. The reload cycle on the Mark 26s is like 13 to 18 seconds.
It's kind of silly.
And with SM2MR and it being a data link fly out, guidance for terminal illumination, the Tychos could have a dozen or more missiles in the air, as long as the targets aren't like hilariously far spread out, which realistically against the threat volume they wouldn't have been. They could have like 20 missiles in the air at like 10 to 15 targets or more. We still don't fully know in the public space. But what the VLS did was gave them serious strike capability, as well as just more missiles in general and more versatility. It took them from being pure air defense ships to being capable of high volume Tomahawk strikes, high volume anti-ship warfare, long range anti-ship warfare as well. Because keep in mind, VLA was not VLA. Chasm was not retired and smarter missile than our own. People tend to forget that. It had another seeker channel, a passive radar seeker for identifying radar emissions of targets and comparing that to what was uploaded to. Harpoon did not have this. But like Chasm was retired because it was surplus to requirements. There was no need. But
Harpoon is all you need.
Realistically by that point in the 90s, standard missile was all you need. There was nobody that could compete. Like the just sheer versatility that the Tychos got with their 122 VLS, like that's what it offered, and it did offer a denser pack surface to air missiles should you want that many surface, because you didn't have to have a weirdly fiddled magazine, anything like that. You could just, if you wanted Tomahawks, you could have Tomahawks. If you wanted more standard missile too, you could. If you wanted a crazy amount of VLA for some reason, and they could have the original ASRock on their twin arms as well, but they couldn't fling a Tomahawk on a twin arm. Like, you're not doing that.
Yeah.
But it really didn't have a bearing on meaningfully how many targets they could engage at once. They had the same number of pretty much the same radars, which did the data linking to the missiles directly. Those are your number of data link channels. Illuminators are what limit how many targets you can engage at once with Aegis.
Nice.
It's not the rate of fire of your armatures by that.
Yep. Leslie Mitchell asks, how far could the RN push the Nelrod design to still look Washington Treaty compliant, I assume he means? Well, I think you've got a few ways you can go about this. You've basically got to decide, well, first of all, what design has the most potential to be pushed. I think at that point, you're not looking at historical Nelrod, you're looking at F3. You're looking at the battle cruiser or fast battleship design rather than the 23 knot Nelrods as your starting point to really push. Because they're already pushing it with the way the ship's protection scheme is arranged and the water-filled volumes within them.
The question is, are you willing to drop the 16-inch guns?
Or if you're not, are you willing to drop the number of guns?
I think there's a thing here as well, like to still look Washington Treaty compliant in the same way that multiple nations went over displacement limits, but lied about it, so it still looked plausible. If so, then we probably have a couple extra 1,000 tons to work with, but we also have the big question of, if found out, how much of a risk would that be for delegitimizing the naval treaty in general, considering we're one of the main signatories?
Considering sheer that everyone was cheating, I mean, the Lexingtons are sat right there as flagrant violators.
Yes, but
Let Foxo go first, and then I have a weigh-in on that one.
the issue is that the Rodneys, they look heavier than they actually are, which is part of the issue. And they were sort of the limit of what they would accept, of what the Rodney even knew everyone else would accept of. That's how big you can make a capital ship on that tonnage with those guns and that layout. If you try and go any bigger, it's going to be blatantly obvious you're breaking the rules.
Yeah, even if people are cheating the rules, as long as they're only cheating them by a little, it's still putting a cap on what people can get away with, so to speak.
And also,
And the Rodneys are already cheating.
Foxo, please.
Nelson and Rodney are already cheating.
Am I? Okay, Foxo, please. With Lexington and Saratoga, they're still, even in, when was Washington signed? 29?
No, that's first London. Washington was signed in the negotiations. I think were 19, 20, 21, and the treaty treaty went into force. I think
22.
Yeah, signed
Good.
22.
This helps my point. It's air power is seen as far more of a scouting asset than an actual striking asset in this point in time. It's still not seen as the main striking or main strategic force of a navy possessing nation. So
it's basically
it's
very quickly.
Let me finish, please.
Wait, let him finish.
Let her speak.
They're not seen as the primary striking or the strategic asset of their navies. So if you have the Lexingtons that are wink, 33,000 tons, people aren't going to get as up in arms about that as a 16-inch battleship, which is wink, 33,000 tons, or whatever the limit at Washington was for battleships.
35,000. 35,000 tons.
Point complete. You may now continue, Fleet of Native.
Never mind. Because my point only made sense in the middle of your point, but never mind.
Yeah, so essentially, if you want to make a different Nelson, you've got to cut the 16-inch guns off Nelson. Which I don't think the Royal Navy would be willing to do.
No.
It's also a matter of which direction do you want to push the Nelrod design.
Honestly,
because if you want more speed, you can probably do that without really bending the treaties too much. You just have to factor in a third shaft. If you want more firepower, or firepower particularly, that's where you're going to have to get creative with your accounting.
Honestly, the only way I could see to realistically push this is to try and get the proper G3 turrets, the ones that haven't been shrunk down for the Rodneys, onto the design. So avoiding a lot of the compromises that give the Rodney and Nelson so many issues with their turrets and guns during the interwar period. That's the best angle I can see for pushing the design limits and getting a realistic benefit from it without making.
That's 800 tons, which is pretty obvious on a ship that size.
No, I know it is. But like I say, of all the angles to push, that's the only one I can see as being realistic. No, Petch. Petch, the issue wasn't just the guns. There were lots of issues with the mounts.
Were the indigenous 16-inch guns that much heavier than the German designs?
Lighter.
Or were they 16.5s and that's why they went with the German designs?
They didn't go with German.
They didn't go with.
Yes, they did. They went with a modified German 16-inch design.
No,
They took
No, they didn't.
no.
No,
they
didn't.
took the idea of lighter weight, higher velocity shell.
Yes. It's a case of convergent evolution.
No, not convergent evolution. They took some inspiration from tests of captured German guns from World War One.
Yeah, that's right. They
liked what they saw and came up with their own way of doing.
Yeah, they did tests on. They fired them at Bayern, didn't they? Or was it Baden? One of the two. They can do gunnery trials against Bayern or Baden. With
there was some stuff that was missed, however, with it, and that led to some lackluster performance. And then there was engineering problems from other things that led to actual performance issues with the guns too.
Yeah, the Nelsons. Luckily though, the Nelsons had a whole interwar period to work out their kinks.
I mean, but back to the question, the biggest improvement, honestly, would probably be increasing the armor belt coverage.
Yeah, you could probably get away with that without making the ship physically bigger.
Especially towards her raft. The protection on the Citadel gets a bit skimpy.
Yeah, you could do that. That's probably the way you could do it.
If you extend the belts, then you are adding weight and it will sit lower in the water, which will allow people to, roughly guess how heavy it is anyway. So you'd have to take armor away from elsewhere to keep that sneaky.
I mean, in theory, when she's in port, you could just not flood the flooded part of her torpedo defense system. That might give you the tonnage back to make her sit high enough.
You don't want her sitting too high in the water either, and this is a problem because they're going to be able to see a beefier extension of belt armor.
Yeah.
You don't want them realizing how deep that belt.
Additionally, you're going to have wear on the hull paint that is going to suggest where that ship sits when she is underway.
Yes.
And to people whose lives are spent staring at hulls, they are going to notice that and notice that this ship rides significantly lower than it is sitting currently.
Poseidon, just very quickly, Foxo, I need to just address chat for 1 second. Poseidon, it's not so much that aft protection is an issue, it's just we're literally looking for things we can push in the Nelrod design that will increase capability without being blindingly obvious to the naked eye they've been pushed.
Yeah, but some areas of the...
Hang on, Foxo first.
Sorry. Yep, sorry.
But the aft does have some quite noticeable armor gaps. The places where it's sort of uncomfortably unprotected. Especially around the 6-inch magazines. But honestly, dropping the 6-inch and sort of going to the uniform 4-inch, 4.5-inch battery might work to save some weight.
That could work.
Unify the magazines and then use the excess weight to plug holes in the armor belt.
I mean, you could do that, but the problem is we are in a period where the 6-inch battery is seen as still a vital part of the battleship's suite of armaments. So the Royal Navy is not going to want to...
Navy, yeah.
Yeah, the Royal Navy is not going to... Especially since this is the first battleship with a modern arrangement for that 6-inch battery in turrets. This is the problem. The Nelrods are already pushed as far as they can be.
Please save my ears.
What did I do?
You just got really excited there and raised your voice up.
Sorry. The Nelrods are already pushed as far as they can be pushed without being obviously treaty breaking.
Yeah, the problem we're facing is the same one the designers were at the time. They also had this question. And we're not all naval architects, so we're probably not as sneaky as they would be.
So what was their launch? What was their treaty displacement? Was 35,000 tons?
Yes.
They got 1,700 tons to play with there. Or 12 to 1,700 tons to play with at launch.
problem is, Ruinon, they came out at 37,080 tons full load.
At full load.
I think there were a few allowances made for us specifically with our longer cruising requirements.
Yes.
But if memory serves, the limit was for tonnage at standard.
Yes, it was.
So they've got 17 to 1,200 tons in their standard that they can play around with.
But that leaves good room for refits later.
Yeah, that's... Well, no, refit tonnage is actually not included in the standard displacement. That's on... You get that on top of it.
Oh, interesting.
Although the US literally used that tonnage when they rebuilt the Lexington.
To build, the Lexingtons. But you can push the design more while still being compliant.
Yeah, it's... I think we've had a good discussion. We've Foxo's really come in clutch and has listed some good ideas for how you would push the nail rods. But I think we probably...
Can I just get one extra point about the 6-inch guns?
Sure, of course. Before we move on.
It's strange that the Nelson and Rodney have them. When you look at a lot of the designs that come based around the G3s, for the smaller versions of the G3s, and they get dropped quickly. Even before Nelson and Rodney their designs finalized, they're being dropped. So it's just strange to me that they still had them. When those turrets were very heavy for 6-inch gun turrets.
It is one of those things, isn't it? It's a bit weird. But they are what they are. So I think we should probably move forwards. We're not doing too bad today. You should Minecraft Watcher. What if the RAF never gained control over the Fleet Air Arm? Then you
Royal Navy would be a lot happier.
Oh, yeah.
You'd probably have a design lineage of aircraft that would mirror quite closely the developments we see in the USN and the IJN. Because remember, despite the fact that, while yes, you do see a lot of equivalence in capability between the USN, RN, and IJN fleet air arms during the interwar period, the RN's fleet air arm does make weird decisions because it is influenced by the Ministry of Aircraft Procurement and the RAF in control of it, especially when it comes towards the adoption of technologies like dive bombing and the adoption of decent monoplane fleet air defense fighters in the late 30s.
There's so many
organizations around.
But it's worse than that because you don't get the Spitfire in that case. And that changes a lot when it comes to the development of British aircraft.
Why don't we get the Spitfire?
Who was the Spitfire designed and made by?
Supermarine.
Who?
Float plane racing plane manufacturer.
Float plane racing.
Yes.
And were heavily involved with the Royal Navy until the Royal Navy wasn't able to support them. Then they moved over to the RAF. If you've got the Royal Navy still in control of their own aircraft, they've got their own designers, they've got their own manufacturers, which means that Supreme never really has a reason to get into the land-based fighter because that was a move of desperation.
A very interesting other fighter that was going to be called Spitfire.
That is
exactly.
That could have also still been used by the RAF, and in some senses would have been a little bit more useful.
Also, what you see is if the RAF, if the Royal Navy continues to maintain its control of its own aircraft, from a technological aspect, you're going to have the Battle of Britain is going to be radically different because you will have 20 plus odd years of a British armed service being obsessed over single engine performance.
Yes, the RAF was not.
Yes, because the RAF was very much captive by the bomber mafia. They were just slap another engine on it, it'll be fine. Whereas the Royal Navy is constrained by the fact that everything has to operate on a flight deck. Also, there are a number of campaigns in the North Sea and North Atlantic that go very differently because it means that the Royal Navy is now integrated with its maritime
It makes
patrol
some
assets.
of the Mediterranean stuff easier too,
Oh god, yeah. And I
because
mean,
you'll actually have something better than the Fulmar.
I mean, you've also got dive bombing in the RN as a thing that actually comes about not sneakily.
Maybe,
Like,
maybe it depends.
because the problem,
Maybe,
like,
but
But you can't guarantee that fleet.
no, I
yeah, A,
can't.
you can't guarantee that, and B, my only issue I have with Supreme still making land-based aircraft
No, it
is
wasn't.
that
I don't think Cyclic was talking about them making a land-based aircraft. It was like they were gonna, if they're still existing with
They were
Royal Navy
actively
contracts.
working on a gull-winged high-performance fighter for the Royal Navy. And that got shut down by the RAF. If they stay with the RN, that's not going to get shut down. The RN's going to have that aircraft. That means there's going to be an active production line when, well, metaphorically, shit hits the fan.
because
That can be capitalized on too.
the main issue I see with that is both the RAF and the Royal Navy and the Coastal Command are very territorial when it comes to manufacturers at this point. Like, almost, you work with the Air Force, we do not work with you levels. And especially when you got stuff like rearmament and the Shadow Scheme, that was put under Lord Nuffield, who didn't have any power over Navy and Navy contractors. So,
Now, while I do understand entirely what you're saying, let's remember something here.
Wartime pressures can change.
Like this is the thing. This is
Pre-war.
the thing. Yes, pre-war.
I'm not talking about pre-war.
Yeah.
I'm talking once the stuff hits the fan.
Yeah, pre-war, Fox.
but
I think you're
a different aircraft by a different company pre-war, because a lot of the work for the Spitfires pre-war.
Well, yes, we get that. What we're saying is you'd probably see there would be, so you'd have the Hurricane probably still, and you would probably have a different frontline fighter aircraft that's also serving alongside the Hurricane that isn't the Spitfire.
Had its own Seafire, separate from what people now identify as Seafire.
Yes, I know. That's
I'm not talking to you, fleet.
Yeah.
Can I finish
that
my
was under development, and that's what I'm talking about, Fox.
Yes.
So that aircraft.
Yeah, can I finish?
I get that. The aircraft, I think, would kill the land-based Spitfire in its crib.
Can I finish? Yeah, can I finish my point?
Wouldn't.
Yeah, can I finish my point? So, I think you both are right, and let me explain how I think this and how I want to tie it all together. So, you will probably still see something like Hurricane, if not Hurricane itself. There will probably be a push from the RAF to develop a land-based high-performance fighter to complement Hurricane that will not be Spitfire and will not be made by Supermarine. Supermarine will be working on and building an aircraft that may be called Spitfire for the Navy, the gull-winged high-performance fighter. Now, as World War II kicks off, you will have these production lines going on, you will have these aircraft on stream for various parts of the UK Armed Forces. And it's not totally unrealistic to imagine a scenario where the RAF looks at the performance of the Spitfire, quote-unquote, and goes, can you make us a land-based version to complement our existing types? And spin up a production line for it. It's not entirely unrealistic that might happen.
I think we'd see a lot of changes in how rearmament was approached if capacity and control was in different areas, considering how much emphasis was put on air defenses and responding to the air threat and building up our own capacity to project power there. It wouldn't surprise me if the expediencies we saw in our timeline, i.e. the lack of authority over fleet projects, wasn't something that was done because of the exigencies of rearmament. But also, I think the fleet air arm remaining in control of its own stuff would be really, really good for especially the development of naval platforms in general, because the Navy was one of the main early innovators for aircraft for us. And as you were saying with your very good points to do with their emphasis on single engine development, it would be really interesting to see how that would go forward, and how especially the allocation of capacity and how that would affect naval doctrine would actually impact the early years of the war, and how much we can leverage our single engine production capacity.
Just very quickly on that point, and didn't Gloucester come up with a monoplane fighter to succeed the Gladiator, but it was hamstrung by the lack of decent high-performance engines that weren't the Merlin?
Yes, and also no. Gloucester was sort of limited by the amount of engines, especially good engines that were on hand, but also they were all hands on deck, still building, servicing, maintaining, etc. the Gladiator. So their teams were seen as rather busy at the time.
But just let me hypothetically roll for a second. Actually no. You go first, because what you say might influence me. So you first.
And the big company that we know can design single-engine and twin-engine fighters, and the early adopters of the 20 mils, which the RAF liked, would be companies like Westland. And if you get Westland what they need, high-performance engines, you might even see the British having a functional twin-engine heavy fighter program before the Mosquito.
Nice.
Possible. I'd say as well the extra money sloshing around the Fleet Air Arm side might mean that the Supermarine itself would have additional capacity and perhaps more design capacity as well.
Yeah. You might see Hurricane be a slightly... No. When Hurricane's designed and built, it is a decent fighter.
Remember Hurricane's 36?
Yeah, I know. I had to correct myself. But there is also a wild card we haven't considered here. Bear in mind, the Royal Navy's lighter than air program for rigid and lighter than air ships was wound up into the Air Ministry, even though they did maintain partial control over it, and it was turned into a prestige piece and a aeronautical studies program, rather than creating weapons for war and assets for patrol. If the Royal Navy gets to retain control of that program, which it likely would with these separate services, you would likely see rigid and non-rigid airships be part of the RN's scouting programs and operational capability through the interwar period.
And Knight, remember, the Fulmar is basically built solely so that the Royal Navy can do an end run around the Air Ministry to get a dive bomber.
Thing is, you don't need fairly Fulmar to do that operational Overwatch. A normal single-engined fighter can do that.
Yeah, you don't need 2 seats for Cap.
And you don't need the Fulmar specifically to do that. And like as we see, Royal Navy carriers equipped with Marlets have them doing the same thing, and the Marlet being the F4F, and they do the job just as well as the Fulmars can do it.
It's a truly bizarre name.
Yeah, we like putting names on things. F4F, it's the Martlet. Eric Winkle-Brown threw Marlets off Audacity.
So interesting idea.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
They may not survive into World War One. Sorry, World War Two. Sorry, because Ferry is in really dire states and is essentially propped up by the Royal Navy through secondary means.
Don't care. Sounds weird, Bone Meal.
So what you're saying is if they had more money sloshing around, they might be less reliant on Ferry as a contractor?
Kind of. What I'm saying is, if the Royal Navy has access to Supermarine, has access to Supermarine, why would they go to Ferry at this point? Because aside from the Swordfish, Ferry's done a lot of failing.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Which means, it also means with the RAF as a... Oh, does that mean we're not going to be cursed with the battle?
Probably.
Yay!
Because that means, because if we're going by the idea of Westland becomes predominant when it comes to fight the RAF, because they're the ones in position to do so alongside Hawker. Supreme is kept tight with the Navy with contracts because Supreme's a very small country. Supermarine is a very small company until Lord Nothing gets involved. And rearmament. So, yeah, you might see Fairy get torpedoed.
It's certainly possible. You make a good point about how small Supermarine was until Lord Nuffield and rearmament gets involved. But I suppose that also means that rearmament would provide, in this alternate route, a pathway for other smaller companies to perhaps get that same shot in the arm that Supermarine did.
True.
So that gap in the space of the RAF may well just have been met by another hypothetical company.
Just for God's sake, let it not be Blackburn. We don't need...
I'll have you know, the Blackburn Firebrand is the greatest plane known to man.
Blackburn.
It's either going to be Blackburn, which I hate the idea of, or it's going to be Westland. You can't decide which one's worse.
Yeah, right. So, we've really done that one in now, folks. So, moving swiftly on.
Yes.
Ruinon, please hypothesize how a set of high voltage 5 kilovolt AC plus encased in a helitically wound steel armor jacket coated with a layer flexible PVC could spontaneously catch fire while de-energized. The conductor itself is copper, then a dielectric layer, then a metallic shield, and finally a thermoset resin outer jacket. The cable is totally de-energized and not even in a connection box. Fleet.exe has stopped working. Please restart with normal language.
How it could spontaneously catch fire? Well, I suppose we could throw it in a fire and then it would spontaneously catch.
Okay.
Could you repeat the question for me quickly?
What were you going on, Foxa?
She wants the question repeating. Someone please do it. I can't put my brain through that again.
Please hypothesize how a set of high voltage...
Hang on, share. I have put pictures of the cable in question in the Rambling text chat, in case somebody wants to know. Anyway, would please hypothesize how a set of high voltage, i.e. 5 kilovolts, 8 alternating current or greater, encased in a helically wound or coiled steel armor jacket, which itself is encased in a layer of PVC, polyvinyl chloride, could spontaneously catch fire while de-energized, meaning not hooked up to any electricity whatsoever. The conductor itself is copper. Then there is a dielectric, meaning impermeable to electricity, layer around it, which itself has another metallic shield around that. And then finally, a thermoset resin, a type of polymer, outermost jacket.
I don't know. Sounds safe to me.
The reason I ask this question is because where I am working, they want a fire watch on this cable because they're classing it as a transient combustible. And in the nicest way, to Sea Otter's point, if there is a large enough electromagnetic field that will cause this cable to combust inside a fission power plant, we will have much larger problems than the fact that this cable is on fire.
Gentlemen, the cable's on fire. Okay, and this is
shielded and protected.
And this is the worst news. No, the reactor's also gone critical. Why didn't you open with that, Carl?
I've learned some follow-on information that makes it make a little more sense.
Okay.
There's some of the fire suppression they have is calculated off of room volume, and how the cable is run has impacted the room volume. And anyway,
is it possible for there to be a hysterically large electrical surge through it?
No.
Then
it's not.
No, it's not a chance.
It's not even run coaxially with other conductors that could induce a appreciable voltage into the cable. Yes, Akazuki, I've been working, air quotes, at a nuke plant for the last 4 months.
Right. So, next question. Knight6831 asks, for VADM, I'm not sure what that acronym stands for, Holland
Vice
and
Admiral.
Thank you. Vice Admiral Holland and Captain Kerr, who'd been destroyer men, how different was handling Hood compared to what they'd been on before? Well, Hood wasn't their first big ship command. Like, a lot of destroyer men do end up going through cruisers before they get to capital ships. Cunningham was the same. He went through cruiser command in the interwar period before he got his hands on a capital ship. So Hood's just a bigger cruiser. Literally! She literally is a bigger cruiser! She's the bigliest cruiser you could get!
Not really. Not really.
I'm making a joke that she's a battle cruiser, Foxo. Therefore,
Yeah,
the bigliest cruiser.
But on a serious level, from what I read, Hood handled like no other ship in the Royal Navy.
Not surprising, given the way her fucking, the way she cuts through the water. Ah, yes, my bow wave will end before my stern.
Also, one thing to point out is, unless I am misremembering things about when Holland was on Hood, Holland wouldn't have been handling Hood. Holland would have been handling the battle force or the battle group, task group, whatever the nomenclature was for that unit. So at that point, that's too granular for him to really worry about. That's Kerr's problem. And it's Kerr's responsibility to feed back to Holland that, hey, your order would require me to break the laws of physics or compromise the ship. And yeah, you're going to work your way up, as what Foxo said, I think. You're going to have to work your way up to handling that ship. They'll get something that's intermediate, you know, a heavy cruiser, and then they'll go to something that's on battleship, battlecruiser scale. They may even spend some time in an R class, or they'll spend time as an XO on a battlecruiser before they get a captain for a battlecruiser. The U.S. Navy, last time I heard anything about it, does something similar where people who are being groomed for carrier command go to large oilers so they can get their deep draft experience.
It's not necessarily large oil. Typically amphibs, because those are the most numerous ones that have a military. They do a lot of their, because they're aviators, they have to go through divos, so division officers, and go through and get all their quals. So they'll do that on board carriers. They'll do that large amphibious ships, and typically they'll end up captaining or XOing an amphibious ship, and then XOing a carrier, and then carrier command.
He said the line!
I don't know which line he said, but okay.
Carrier command.
Okay.
Good game. Good
Can
game.
somebody drag Dragon in by the ears, because I have no idea how to answer this next question.
Probably not. The man's a little bit stressed. I think he's had a tough week. Bless him. YouTube Minecraft watcher, what is the panel's opinion on the Marathon class cruisers of the United States Space Command?
United
Nations Space Command.
It's a shame they didn't have more.
The Marathons were brick.
Gun.
No,
They were
They are cool as hell. That's what they are.
It's a flying brick.
Marathons are gun attached to propulsion with some armor and life support added on.
And a lot of missiles.
That's the limit of my UNSC ship knowledge.
Remind me again, the whole thing with the UNSC fighting the Covenant, is it missiles to bring down the shields, then Mac, or is it Mac to bring down the shields, then
it's
missile?
generally Max. And if you're lucky, the Mac also got a Covenant ship, but it depends on the power of the Mac that you've got available.
Yeah, there's
The
a whole
ship you're up against,
classification
and
system.
yeah,
It's confusing.
And the Marathon having 2 Macs is quite useful. Depending on what you're up against. If you're up against to drop the shields to gut the ship, and then you finish it B with archers. But there's no like rock paper scissors.
No.
Base combat was just brutally one-sided.
Yeah.
And to be honest, for the most part, ground combat too, when you actually dig into the lore. Like, yes, it was a, quote, more equal fight on the ground.
But it was still
when
unequal.
it's so heavily disparaged in space, it was really the like, and once you've lost space in the Halo universe, it's bad news bears for anybody.
Unless the
because
Covenant was
your
specifically
enemy
looking for
has
something.
all the mobility. They have all the fire supported. Like,
I mean, we literally see them bring bloody corvettes into atmosphere and do the space equivalent of
they
a literal.
brought battle cruisers and assault carriers into atmosphere.
Okay, we are officially.
And the UNSC has brought frigates into atmosphere and stuff like that to
We are officially
provide fire support. Yeah.
in the realm of not so much dear grid coordinates as dear that sector of a continent.
Oh, it can be bye-bye. It can be anything from bye-bye bunker or bye-bye tank to I don't want to see that city again.
Yeah, and then you
generally
also have
speaking, the Covenant was more willing to commit large numbers of ground forces. The only reason that certain planets were glassed was because of very funky reasons. The only reason that Reach got the treatment it did was because Battle Group Trafalgar dealt the fleet of Holy Press such a bloody nose that they could not let it stand on a cultural level. So they wiped the planet clean as a message. That's the only reason Reach got the treatment that it did. To correct the error of humanity giving the Covenant fleet such a bloody nose that they couldn't let it continue.
You say
one of the largest fleet engagements of the war.
Yeah, wasn't that basically the first time the humans had kind of?
No, it was not the first time.
It wasn't the first time, but it was
one of the few times.
It was one of the few battles where humanity dealt such a bloody nose that the Covenant had to call in reinforcements.
Damn.
For both the naval and the ground campaign, because so many of their carriers, as in like planetary assault carriers, have been crippled or destroyed by Task Force Trafalgar doing very funny fleet hit and run maneuvers the whole way to Reach. By the time they got into orbit above Reach, the Covenant had been whittled down by a fair number of their ships. It was like the Great Host in fucking Helldivers.
Forgive me.
Except against Super Earth and not Reach.
Yeah.
But Reach is also, for those who don't know, headquarters of the UNSC's colonial fleet, effectively.
Forgive.
Also a fairly large Spartan training facility, which is why there are so many Spartans on Reach by the time of its fall.
Yeah. Forgive a humble non-Halo MacGuffin who has only played some of the games, but doesn't know the deep lore. But I'm just thinking, you say on the way to Reach, don't people just enter slip space and then they come out of slip space above a planet?
Not really. It's a bit like hyperspace in Star Wars. Large gravity wells really fuck with slip space drives, unless you have like a very highly advanced slip space drive technology and plotting computers. The Covenant don't even have that stuff that good, and the way the Covenant tend to survey star systems is they will drop at the far edge, sort of around the area of the Kuiper belt of a star system, and power in system starward, spreading out to survey planets that they're detecting in the case of the Human Covenant War, their main way of showing up to a human colony system was dropping in on the edge of the system, sending out scout craft such as their fast attack vessels, corvettes, etc. Some of their heavy corvettes could do that really well, to survey the planet, survey the system and find out the enemy's composition and disposition, and then steam inwards, steamrolling everything they came across. The reason it didn't quite work at Reach was because, one, Reach wasn't the only colonized and heavily built up planet in the system, and two, home base of much of the colonial fleet. Battlegroup Trafalgar was about the size of a Warhammer 40k like battle fleet for an oversector.
Oh my!
It was big. There was a lot of shit there.
Bigly big.
Bigly
it
big.
was based around one of the few ships that could stand toe to toe
Against
with
one of
the
the super
Covenant
carriers.
capital ship.
Which was?
Yeah. Trafalgar.
herself.
Trafalgar.
The supercarrier Trafalgar. They are the sort of preceding class to Infinity.
Ooh,
They have
and
stupidly large
they named it Trafalgar. That's
Yep.
awesome.
So the Punic class supercarriers are, off of memory, 4 kilometers long.
Ooh.
I actually worked out recently that they have a rough, also known as the Epsilon Eridani fleet, yes, but it was renamed to Battlegroup Trafalgar in much the same way that a modern carrier strike group is typically named after the flagship. I worked out that they have an internal volume in cubic meters of roughly 3 billion. That's a lot of shit you can fit in a 4 kilometer long vessel.
It is. I think
And they
we're
mount
getting a
something
little bit away
like-
from the question though. Which was,
No, I know, but to be fair, when it came to when it comes to the original question, the marathons are fucking cool. It's a shame they had to replace the Halcyons, but the Halcyons were ludicrously difficult to maintain and build.
And also originally very lightly armed.
Yeah, they were also like ridiculously underarmed for their size.
Pillar of the Sun
Um,
was, by the time of the games, not a normal Halcyon.
Yeah,
She was very specifically refit.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
YouTube Minecraft Watcher asks, what old Age of Sail ship names do you think need to be reused but haven't been in a while? Well, the US unfortunately can't reuse Constitution because, well, she's still in commission.
Still in service.
Well,
But we can and we have, so we have. I think we have had one other Constitution vessel in service, if memory serves.
No.
Didn't we?
You're thinking of Constellation.
Yeah, Constellation was of the same class as Constitution. Much of a lot of actually like old, like original run heavy frigates, I think they're known as.
yeah, the heavy
Original
frigates.
six.
Yeah, a lot of the original 6 names have been reused a fair number of times. The latest one is the Constellation class, named after USS Constellation. I think ship 3.
And also the name of a carrier.
Mm.
So, but no, there's only ever been one Constitution.
My pick would be HMS Foresight. I know it's been used a couple times since it was Age of Sail, last for a destroyer in the Second World War, but I think it's just a fantastic name, especially if you go into a fight and win.
Give them boarding access and call it HMS Farsight.
Am I nuts? I feel like I might be nuts. I'm nuts. Probably nuts.
I
Quite
mean,
nuts.
okay. First, okay,
to also
standout-
like to add to that a little bit, because a lot of people don't know this. HMS Victorious is named the way she is because we can't reuse the name HMS Victory because we've had her in service
yeah,
officially for so long. So we're like, well, we want to reuse the same style of name, so we went with Victorious rather than Victory.
yes.
Not named after Victoria, as some people incorrectly attribute it. But yeah, still a fun thing that like occasionally things will get modified.
Just very quickly, you don't have to ping members of the panel to make them read chat, guys. Like we are reading chat. You don't have to ping us. We are reading the chat.
Yeah, this is not a Twitch live stream. He reads chat.
And that goes for all members of the panel. We are all reading chat. You don't have to ping us.
Okay. So I may be insane, but I'm not as insane as I could be. because she was briefly renamed Old Constitution in 1917.
Why?
I'm trying to find that one out because I believe there was a reason because they wanted to take the name and put it on something else. But I'm looking through the wiki now. I'm just glad to know that I'm not as insane as I could be, which is a pretty low bar because I could be pretty fucking insane. Anyway.
I mean, first things first, standout. Where's Sovereign of the Seas? Let's bring that back.
Oh, the name was freed up to go on one of the Lexingtons, but the Lexingtons got canceled.
Ah.
I see.
So had the
Like I
Lexington,
said, there's
number-
only ever been one constitution.
Yeah, a number of the Lexingtons as battle cruisers were actually going to be reuse a lot of the original 6 frigate names.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was part of the motif of the class, so to speak. So yeah, Bone Meal Boys got it. Yeah, I'm just glad to know that I'm not as insane as I could have been.
No, Bone Meal Boy, Royal Sovereign is not the same name as Sovereign of the Seas, and it's not a rewording of it.
So I've got a name that should come back to the Royal Navy for me to sail.
Yeah. Cool.
Gay Archer.
Oh my god, yes.
That would be a great
Yes.
I hate that I had that exact fucking name on the tip of my tongue. As soon as you said it, I was like, she's gonna say it. It's gonna be Gay Archer. Funny enough, I was also talking to some of my friends and one of my partners about Gay Archer and the Gay Vikings the other day.
Funniest thing is, okay, here's one. Let's bring back Jesus of Lubeck just for the lols. I'm not sure which navy it's going to serve in, but fuck it. Someone name a ship Jesus of Lubeck. I don't know which navy it's going to belong to.
You just name a ship HMS Jesus.
No,
You don't do
no, because the thing is, Jesus of Lubeck was a ship of the Hanseatic League hired out to the British. So that's why I'm saying I have no idea who's...
Wasn't she used in the Spanish, against the Spanish Armada?
She was, and she was used in other operations overseas as well in the Caribbean.
I believe the intention was to have her sail with Drake, or with Drake's old flagship, Revenge.
I mean, she did. She was involved in an action in an anchorage in the Caribbean, where she quite literally helped enable the British fleet to escape using her monstrous guns mounted forward to, quite frankly, bully a bunch of Spanish galleons that were in the way, while her crews quite literally did the equivalent of walking their ships out by literally carrying the anchor out in a boat and then dropping it over the horizon, and then using not over the horizon, sorry, out in front, and then the ships of the task force literally winched themselves out using their anchors.
A process known as...
Don't look at me like that. I don't know the answer to that question.
Kedging.
Yeah. My brain initially went with keel hauling, but that's a different thing.
Yeah. We do that to bad boys. Why did I say that?
Do you realize that was really, really funny about Jesus of Lubeck?
Uh-huh.
When she was in English service, she wasn't Jesus of Lubeck. She was Jesus of Lubeck.
What?
The English added a H after the J, so it's Jesus.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh my god.
That's predominantly because of the factory hub was under attack. Fuck.
Really? I didn't realize that's why they did.
Sorry, I'm checking the
That was
galactic
perfectly
right
timed.
The reason for that is because of old English spellings.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd also just like to clarify for chat. The battle they're talking about is the Battle of San Jahan de Ulama
Thank you.
in 1568. Just off modern-day Veracruz.
Yeah, okay, she was lost there. Fair enough. Right, okay. Oh, okay. Final question is a nice, easy palate cleanser and discussion question for us to end off on. Bowmill Boy asks, what if Lansdorf is unable to scuttle Graf Spee or otherwise render her inactive or escape, and the British end up capturing her intact? How is she used for the rest of the war? The British aren't going to use her. She's not... She doesn't fit into their doctrine. She doesn't have systems they they will, want to use. She doesn't fit, and then she's an extra asset they don't need. She will probably be returned to the UK for examination, and you better believe they'll be looking for the code books.
I believe that's actually one of the things that the crew managed to covertly take off the ship.
Yeah. But what was
a number of personal journals, letters, the code books, maps, a lot of random technical documents. I vaguely recall either ended up being found, locked in a cupboard or something, somewhere in Paraguay or Uruguay. I forget which.
Oh shit! I forgot C-Dollars was in the chat.
There's also They're literally just going to get a ship that they can, well, we've got a ship now. The engine's a little fucked. The fuel, what was the component damage? The
engines are fine.
The engines were a little worn down. That's what I mean.
If I remember correctly.
No,
but it wasn't.
Yes, there was the desalination plant which was damaged, but that could have there were workarounds.
It was something to do with the fuel.
Yeah, so the thing is, because of the era she's built in, diesel fuel is not commonly available at ports around the world, but heavy bunker fuel oil is. She literally has a mobile catalytic cracking plant to turn bunker fuel oil into diesel she can put into her engines. That was the thing that got destroyed. And without that, she can't make diesel fuel.
There's also the issue of, because of how long she'd been at sea and had not made it back to German or friendly ports, her engines are actually in a pretty worn down state, and she's in need of refit for that.
And she's and of course she's fouled as well, quite heavily.
Yeah, which means that she's probably going to have to be towed.
Oh yeah, easy.
Which is something that
the Germans are going to want to sink her to avoid her being, a prize in any way.
But even then, if all comes to shove and she makes it to, say, I don't know, Liverpool, so she's far away from, the German bombers and whatnot, and so they don't have to sail her through the channel around Brest.
Yeah. Well, thing is, at that point, the channel is French. 1939, remember? We're still 7 to 8 months away from the death of France.
That's true.
Yeah.
But
even still, I'd probably want to take her either up to Rosyth or Liverpool, because plenty of space up there and far away from German bombers.
You want my cursed answer, C-Dodders? Given her hull form and the work the British can have to do to her engines anyway,
you could probably slam a pair of the 14-inch twins from.
No. What is the one type? Yeah, exactly. Escort carrier.
No.
Escort carrier.
No.
Yes.
No, they're not. No.
Yes.
I disagree.
Graf Spey, if she is captured,
they're not going to be able to keep her engine plant running at.
Yeah, Graf Spey, if she is captured in anything looking like an intact formation, is going to be used as a propaganda piece to piss off Berlin and to sell war bonds. That's what it's going to get used for.
I know.
Yeah, it'll get bandied around.
Yeah, I know. That's the most. Look, I say the reason. Look, I'm trying to prevent the other
options. You did preface
this
with the most cursed option. To be fair,
and also that's not the most cursed option. The most cursed options are sat in rambling text, looking at me funny.
I hate how much I like the second one, but that's mostly because I don't like the turrets, like the main turrets.
But Akazuki, the UK is not going. The UK is not going to take the time and effort to refit a foreign design with British components.
And also, politely, we don't have the marine diesels in the UK at that point that fit what Graf Spey needs. Yes,
we don't technically have, but there is a country that we're currently buying a lot of shit of that does have an equivalent.
No, it's not. It's not so much that we don't have marine diesels in the UK. We do. It's that, bear in mind, the marine diesels that were fitted to the Deutschlands were almost unique in terms of what they offered in terms of power output for size at scale. They were the first true marine diesels at sea that were designed for a ship to cruise at an economical speed, but also have a high top speed as well. Since most motor ships built in the interwar period, while they had the economical cruising, you were lucky to top out at anything higher than 21, 22 knots. I don't think there are any other engines in the period under consideration, aside from the engines fitted to the Deutschlands, that were actually capable of the levels of performance both on cruise and at speed that the Deutschlands were capable of anywhere else in the world. And the reason for this is that those engines had been built with that specific thing in mind. And to get the same thing out of British or American or French or whatever country you want to go to, for these diesels you want to put in, you're going to have to go through the same long development process to get an engine that will fit that characteristic. It's going to be at least a year, a couple of years, if you want to do that. And at that point...
there is also that. She may also just get hulked and used as a breakwater.
Yeah, literally, the realistic outcomes are propaganda tool that's used for the rest of the war, propaganda tool for a bit, then scrapped, or propaganda tool for a bit and then block shipped. Or propaganda tool for a bit, covered in as much AA as possible and parked in the Isle of Man as a floating flak battery.
A floating flak battery isn't the world's worst idea, actually.
I mean, she's literally a hull that floats. Go on, Foxo.
Oh, you mean the Isle of Wight?
Yeah, go on, Foxo.
So, I thought would be, if you have to put up into British service, would be get your hands on an American diesel engine equivalent and stick her in the Indian Ocean.
Honestly, if you're having to replace the engines anyway,
HMS Sydney, just have her so she's a hull that can replace HMS Sydney and get actually useful cruisers out of the Indian Ocean.
Yeah,
well, how long would it actually take to do the refit, though?
Here's the thing: if you're going to go to the trouble of replacing
More
the engines,
importantly, what docks?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Everything's kind of busy.
Yeah, thing is, if you're going to replace the engines anyway, honestly, at that point, given you're digging into the hull anyway, you may as well steam her. Genuinely. It'll be easier, it'll make her compatible with more things, her lack of range isn't gonna, reduced range isn't gonna matter so much because she's serving the British now, bases everywhere, and you never know, given the size of engine room available, you might actually be able to push her up to 30 knots. The hull form will allow for it.
I say again, why are the British expending this much effort on a foreign hull?
Because we're exploring the hull. We have a gun to our heads. We have to do this. So we're basically using that as an excuse to detail into this.
I was answering if the British forces them to put her in British service, what would the British do with her?
Yeah, if they're forced to, I still maintain. I see where Foxo's coming from with the sticking with diesel. I still think that if you are replacing engine plans at all at that point, you are steaming her.
At that point, you've gone from an engine swap to basically rebuilding her from the keel up.
Not really. Not for replacing diesels with boilers and turbines. Not given
the amount of work involved is just too much in a practical sense.
Oh yeah, completely. We have moved well beyond.
Then, yeah, it would really need.
I think if she has to be pressed into British war line, battle line service, what they're going to do is they're going to find the most comparable county class that they can, or CVE that's being built from the keel up as such that they can, and take as much of the hull steel and framing steel as possible and incorporate it into that ship, kind of like they did with USS New York and some of the Twin Towers rubble, and call it HMS Graf Spee.
Would be funny. I mean, funny thing is, you could actually rename it, because you don't want to bring Graf Spee because she's a symbol of your enemy, but you could name it HMS Battle of the Falklands, aka the defeat that Graf Spee suffered.
Wasn't it River Plate?
No, I'm talking about the admiral the ship's named after.
Oh yeah, the other one. That's fair.
But yeah, honestly, politely, just to mention, since Foster did mention the Indian Ocean and weird cruisers, honestly, the money, if you want to have a cruise in the Indian Ocean to do that, and that's what their excuse is, I'm literally going to bring the angry Greek person over from the right there, plonk him in front of you, and have him shout, for God's sake, spend this money on upgrading our old armored cruiser instead.
And then I'm going to look at him and go, uh-huh.
Yeah, you could literally, for the same money, you could get more use for less cost and less time out of Avarov than you could out of rebuilding Graf Spee.
Yeah, the list of things waiting for refits at this point is already very long.
Yeah. And also having Avarov being able to move in the Indian Ocean at a speed greater than 15 knots would be nice. Although she was quite a pretty sight in those days, apparently, in the Indian Ocean. She looked quite impressive, even if she wasn't practically impressive. I need to go and see her at some point. The fact she still exists is amazing.
Yeah, circling back to an earlier question, the one about if the British Empire was still ascendant, one of the big things we might have seen was some of our battleships preserved, which would have been nice.
That would have been nice. And of course, the V-bomber force being completely different. Ah, yes, we will build. We will build a B-52 derivative. Well, not derivative, but equivalent, and laugh hysterically all the way to the bank.
That preserving any portion of the Royal Navy's heritage would require Parliament to actually think logically and in the long term.
The main thing it would have required is not.
Cycling.
You cut off.
You cut off
Did
quite
the Gators
badly
still
there.
cycle?
No, hopefully the Gators did
The
not.
main thing that it would require is not logic in Parliament, but money in government. The British government in the period post-World War II, through about the 1970s, was very strapped for cash.
Yeah, there was discussion about keeping around various ships. They kept being sort of kicked down the road, and then it was, we can preserve Vanguard, and then we were like, well, it would cost as much as keeping it in reserve, so we won't. So it is just a money problem at the end of the day for at least keeping one of the battleships around.
Okay, just to very quickly circle back to the current question before we get back to the other one, because I do have a few little tangents I want to go down as a final thing on that question about British Empire, third power bit. But very quickly, Akizuki, there's nothing that needs reverse engineering. The German diesels are not new technology, nor are they special. Like I say, they are just a type of diesel engine arranged a certain way with a certain power band that has been built for these ships to enable them to do the things they do. The technology exists. Motor ships have been a thing in the interwar period since about the late 20s. Big motor ships have been a thing.
And also, the biggest thing, so yes, even if they didn't have the designs, they could re-engineer it. The problem is you're going to have to set up, if you want to just replace it with British manufactured power plant that meets these specifications and this use case, you're going to have to set up an entire production line or take time from an existing production line, which is machinists, machining infrastructure, and tooling, which are all in incredibly tight demand in World War II, to build functionally bespoke parts and spares for this powertrain.
Yeah, realistically, she's going to be used to study how she was damaged with the weapons that she was engaged with, and then as a propaganda tool when they either scrap or scuttle it.
Oh my god, C. Dodders is right. He's right. That's genius.
Chariot's the one with Campbelltown?
Yes, she's a German ship. She doesn't have to be made to look like a German ship. In theory, they just have to try and make it look like... But the problem is, though, she's a very distinctive German ship, so they'll know she's not one of the other Deutschlands because they won't be scheduled. But there is also the fact that she's a Deutschland. If they're not bothered about wrecking her engines, which they won't be, they can overrun her engines to charge her through the mess that she would be involved in as long as they can get her into a decent point before the hell breaks loose, and still ram the dry dock gates, and fill her with more explosives than Campbelltown. Heck, just leave the ammunition for the 11-inch guns and everything else in the magazines and watch the fireworks.
There's just one issue with that, though, Flea.
Yes.
Do you know the biggest thing that allowed Satan is there to work the raid?
Nope, I do not.
The fact that that Campbelltown herself had plausible deniability to the German controller for the dock that this destroyer would be coming in without him being pre-warned.
Oh yeah.
But Dogmasters got got prior warning even for the Nuremberg cruisers. If a Deutschland is coming in, he would have been told, and he would be like, "Wait, why is there a Deutschland sailing into my port?"
Oh yeah.
That I hadn't been told about. And we know that one is in possession of the British,
Oh yeah.
who have been praying repeatedly to destroy the docks as Satan is there.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a very good
And
point.
Additionally, it is not going to be very difficult for the powers that be at Saint Nazaire to phone up German High Command and say, should I be expecting a Deutschland right now? You know,
Yeah.
is there a Deutschland?
It's a big enough ship that they're going to want to do it.
And it's going
It's going to be
very
really
close
weird.
to, MTBs.
Yeah, and there's secrecy and information controls aside, it is. I can't imagine the Kriegsmarine balking at somebody in Berlin saying there are no Deutschlands in your area of responsibility.
Yeah. And she can't even be, she can't even be used as a distraction then, because even if she appears somewhere else along the coast that night, all that's going to do is raise the alert in every single port on the French coast.
Yep.
So yeah, but just a very
Now what she could be. Go ahead, Foxo.
Because around this point, there was also several missions where the Royal Navy sent R-class at night into bombardment range of French and Belgium and Dutch ports to shell barges and landing craft. Drax got a famous one about HMS Revenge being the first stealth battleship.
That was the first
pulling
track.
it off.
Sorry, go on. That was the first track video I ever saw, but go on.
Yeah, and the only use I could see against the Germans would be putting her as a even more disposable asset than.
If you can get her working again.
Yeah.
If she survives long enough, though, we know what her fate will be. If she is around at the time of the Normandy landings, she's being sunk as a block ship for the Mulberry Harbours.
No. If she survives into 44 and 45, she gets to say hello to the friendly atom.
No, she's in the UK.
No, I think the most expedient thing for her is to sink her as a breakwater.
She's about the right size as well.
Bomb anyway.
And she's going to her superstructure and hull was wrecked. Not like horrifically wrecked, but wrecked enough that it wasn't going to provide any useful data.
Now, what you could see happen, which would be a reasonably valid military use and something that I wouldn't put past the British. If she's captured, she is going to be no less than target number 3 per directive from De Führer.
Aggressive.
She could be used as a means of drawing off various German forces as a means of distracting from other targets that the Royal Navy / allies may wish to protect.
So perhaps a distraction for various convoy actions.
Yeah, like if you had a very, very high status convoy, you may say, you know what? We're going to send this ship to the U.S. for safekeeping amongst our allies, and make it very showy and such that feed your German intelligence assets enough good dope that they are going to believe that this is an earnest effort.
Given how utterly compromised the Abwehr was, and how basically British intelligence was running German intelligence,
I'm using a atypical definition of dope here.
Fair enough.
Fleet, but I'm meaning dope as an information. Fair enough, but the crap, I'm stuck on a pixel. Anyway, and get them to move assets out of the way for something that you wanted to protect. You could only do that maybe twice, maybe 3 times, but you could do it if you wanted to.
Yeah,
but otherwise,
it's limited utility, but it'd definitely be something you could.
Yeah. I mean, now to circle back to the final topic I do want to discuss. So the SSB, so just to finally go back to the British enhanced question for a minute. And this is just one more thing I want to touch on. We've talked about the land-based ballistic missiles. We've talked about the SSBNs won't really change. There'll just be more of them. But I think, as Cyclic says, or touched on earlier, the bomber force that Britain inherits / builds is not going to be the V-bomber fleet as we know it at all. It's gonna look a lot similar to US practice. A swept-wing conventional bomber, a la B-52 T-95.
That has nothing to do with what I was saying. You could see very high subsonic or supersonic bombers, but you're going to have a large bomber force with global reach. You're going to have these very long-range strategic bombers.
Oh, God.
With high payload.
Yeah, we'll have a lot more requirements than just we need this to be the nuclear deterrent. They'll also need to have a very strong conventional role in the mix.
Yeah, but you'll probably see the Delta Wings, but because the only company that can really make them is Vickers.
I mean, Foxo, that's
fault of the Delta.
While that was true historically, bear in mind this is an empire with massive resources, a lot more manufacturers in good health, and a completely different post-war aviation development history. I don't think it's even possible to say what form the bombers will look like or who will build them.
And I think can safely say will be Vickers, and it will be a V-bomber, a Delta Wing.
I think that's being far too generous with the specificity. I feel like there are options outside of Vickers, just given the sheer scale of British manufacturing at the end of the war, and that being maintained with the number of companies that are available. There are a lot of options.
Because if we go off World War II, there is 2 companies that can do it. Avro and Vickers. Avro is essentially a wartime conglomerate that was dissolving by the end of World War II already. Internally. And the way Avro's set up, it can't survive post-war in the post-war without getting bought out. Which leaves Vickers.
But the timeline has changed.
Wait, does World War II happen in this timeline?
Again, that's what I'm saying. I don't know.
Presumably so.
Because if
The-
it does, if
the
it does,
question
then
is not thinking otherwise.
if it does happen, then Vickers is the last one standing that can make strategic bombers post-war. If it doesn't, conglomerates like Avro don't really come into existence, which means welcome back, Vickers.
Well, we do see Vickers, Handley Page, and Avro all create one of our V bombers. So we would be able to theoretically extend that program just in scale in this other world. At least for the
Yeah.
immediate post-war requirements. I would expect to see Avro stick around for a while, even if it's quite riven internally.
Yeah, but the big the issue is that in the post-war period, Avro and Hadley Pages are more ventriloquist dolls of Vickers instead of separate companies. So, fair.
Well, I don't have enough.
What is the Avro
specific
748?
knowledge at this point?
Yeah, I feel like but yeah, big. Avro 748.
The medium-sized turboprop put together by Hawker Siddeley.
Zayden, I'm just going to check. Are you suggesting that you go too short for a strategic bomb?
I mean, maybe.
I mean, I just assumed that with the basis of the question, that in this one we would have more stable manufacturers, and if they weren't stable, they could be made stable due to the continued ordering.
The amount of
There would
money.
almost certainly be some reorganization back to peacetime rather than wartime budgets, but I imagine we would have at least a pair of competing organizations in each field.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even if you base it off what happened to a lot of American aviation companies, where they just sort of started glumping each other.
A lot of that happened at the direction of the U.S. government, particularly
Rumsfeld!
the war government. And the worst of it happened after the fall of the Iron Curtain. There were mergers before, but the mergers down into 3 companies happened after the fall of the Iron Curtain.
Rumsfeld!
I remember reading something talking about it was part of some paper I was reading on development, and especially international development and scaling and so. And it mentioned the prime contractor numbers, which the government would be talking to for the development of one of the missiles. I think it was Tomahawk or something along those lines. And the amount of companies that the US government would directly be in contact with throughout the development process had cratered over the 90s. Like, we're talking from, at minimum, like high hundreds to low hundreds. And I imagine that trend only continued.
Well, not only that, but there was a lot of incentive put on larger companies to buy up smaller companies by the US government, because there was a recognition that with the peace dividend, we would not be able to support the amount of companies out there that we had been supporting at 5-6% of GDP, but with 3-4% of GDP, that was a huge reduction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that does track, because we do something quite similar in the immediate post-war period.
Looks at BAE, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. And even then, we don't really have the stuff to keep BAE going, which is why we've had to engage in multiple pan-European development projects.
And even then, BAE's essential Lovecraftian-esque monster when it comes to a defense company.
Yeah,
Just take that back.
BAE's a bit of a mess. But by Jove, has it maintained at least some domestic capability?
Like, I didn't realize this, but just looking at in the 90s, especially, how deep BAE managed to get its roots in stuff like India and Japan. It's like, you own a surprising amount of this stuff. How?
BAE is one of those companies that's like, wait, BAE did that? Wait, BAE did that? Wait, BAE did that?
It's not quite at the level of Mitsubishi Heavy Industries doing literally everything, but it is pretty silly.
Okay, but, you know, it is giving Hitachi a run for its money.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And if anybody knows that joke, welcome in, person of questionable internet search history.
Good lord.
I mean, Hitachi make massive excavation machines. They also make a single-cylinder pop-up little scooters. I don't know what you're talking about, Romanon.
I don't think it's a topic which we need to particularly delve into. After
No,
all, we know
possibly
how
not.
diversified the markets are.
Possibly not, I suspect. But
BAE has retained the old tradition of Vickers. And that is,
In
you
more
can't
ways than
lose-
one.
you can't lose
Vickers would actually
one
be an interesting
opposition.
position. So if the British Empire is significantly stronger at the end of the Second World War, Vickers engages in a lot of attempts to do strange export deals. Obviously, we see quite a bit of success with the Vickers MBT, with the joint venture with India. But they do it with like the Vickers 3, 7, and a bunch of other ones too. And they fail to find a significant export market there. But if there was more money sloshing around, we'd probably see an independent Vickers still around, which would be nice.
Maybe, but the threat is that Vickers is such a monolith in British military industry that they'd probably end up eating the rest of it.
That's possible.
I mean, if
could imagine a
Vickers is
weird
still,
world where it's you have Vickers and BAE.
I just want to point out that if Vickers, sorry Foxo, but I just want to point out that if Vickers is still around, we may still have to deal with the 14-inch salesman.
Yeah, but the more concerning thing is, the reason why you see so BAE in everything is because they inherited a lot of the framework Vickers had for having their fingers in everything. And they inherit a lot of their strange contracts in the British Army, especially. Honestly, BAE made stuff like recoil springs for the L7. It's like, sorry, not recoil springs. So a part of the recoil system for the L7, and you're like, you're an aircraft company. Why do you
Foxo, politely, Vickers are a company. They
Vickers
build
are an everything company.
Yeah, Vickers will build anything for anyone as long as you fork up the cash.
Northrop Grumman makes torpedoes.
I know. I was more talking about BAE inheriting that and still making it.
Again, BAE are also a company.
Because also too, Foxy, you got to remember that the press cares not which part it stamps out, only that it stamps out parts.
Indeed.
Yeah, like General Dynamics makes drones, nuclear reactors, washing machines, toaster ovens.
What? Would Sir like a nuclear toaster oven?
Tanks.
Isn't that General Electric?
APCs.
Oh my god. General Dynamics.
Oh, right, yeah, General Electric, but they're another one. I can't go in.
Like
washing machines, all sorts of appliances.
Trains!
Honeywell Honeywell makes, I think it's the Stinger system or the Law system, but they also are one of the premier building automation contractors in the United States.
I know. And then, of
I
course...
don't recommend them.
Right, do you want to know a stranger one about BAE? They make a lot of the fiber optic cables used by BT, and they still
That's
make a
not
lot of
surprising at all.
BT. There's a billion side of BT. That's basically a different country from the de facto defense contractor one.
Yeah, that's
I
not
love...
surprising. That's normal.
I love the way the world works sometimes.
It is an interesting one, and maybe a little bit concerning that single corporations have so much control over various markets. But this is what it is.
This is the world we live in. Look, I think, like we are approaching.
Sheer, think of the return on investment to the shareholders, Sheer.
Oh my god, the shareholder value. You're right.
Wait, imagine the shareholder value if the world goes back to war again.
I know, right? Think of the profits. Think of the profit margins.
You don't understand. We may have destroyed the world, but for a brief, beautiful moment in time, we made immense shareholder value.
Exactly. See? Sheer gets it.
Meanwhile, in the Russian Federation, shit, line is no longer going up.
No. What's going to start the next World War is some guy with a prosthetic hand, a nuclear warhead, and the BlackRock building.
Good lord.
I'm depressed at how accurate that statement could come out to be.
Something, Kevin Spacey, Advanced Warfare, something.
No, Fleet, that wasn't advanced. That was a cyberpunk reference. Keanu Reeves.
Did you just say Kevin Spacey?
I was going to let that slide.
I may have done.
Kevin Spacey?
I may have deliberately mispronounced his name for a funny goof.
Deliberately?
Yes.
That's the line you're going with, Fleet.
No, that was literally what I did. I know it's Kevin Spacey.
I'm sure it was, Fleet. I'm sure it was.
The fact you can't tell why I deliberately mispronounce things is amusing to me.
Neither of you can prove anything, which is why I believe you are both wrong, because it's possible that a quantum superposition of both states.
No, for fuck's sake, not the physics.
I'm just taking this as an opportunity to laugh at both of you.
What's most likely is that Fleet pronounced it right in his brain, but not his mouth.
No, I deliberately mispronounced it on purpose. That was the whole
point.
That is
the most correct answer.
We can litigate this when we're not streaming.
Something, hammer down. Right, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Short ramblings, Fleet. Get it done quickly, Fleet. Yeah, sure. Me and my big flipping mouth and me and my tangents, go honestly. But we have had fun here today. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Cyclic. Thank you, Foxo. Thank you, Sheer. Lovely to see you again. Hope to see more of you. Thank you, Ruinon. And for those of you who are interested in such things, we will now have a post-Ramblings Hoi 4 game. Not sure what that will be, but there will be a post-Ramblings Hoi game as per usual. Good night to all the panel. Good night to all the YouTube watchers, including YouTube Minecraft watcher, because I do find